Right. We are going to start our school improvement plan meetings this afternoon. Good to see you guys. Excited to hear from you.
That's quite a quartet.
Yeah. Excited. Aaron, do you have anything to say before?
Yeah, I do. So I am excited to hear from our principals. Thank you so much. I like this setup right now so far. Have we started?
I love this.
They're all together. Yeah, there's no one in isolation.
Love this.
Yeah, so I asked Tracy, maybe she could share a little bit of context to what you're going to hear. And then also that each one of you have Brooke's presentation. And then when Brooke is done, then you'll get Hannah's, and when Hannah's done, you'll get Tammy. So you won't have a stack of them right now, but you'll get all of them by the end of it.
Okay.
Tracy.
Hi, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Hanson. Welcome, everybody. It's a fun, exciting night to hear from our elementary team. We decided when Aaron took the position as interim superintendent that we would do our school improvement plans possibly a little differently, with having the same elementary team that we've had administratively last year. We met in the summer so that they could work on their plans early to start the school year, because we all know that once kids come, there's not a lot of time outside of the school day to do that work. So, and we actually, with almost everybody's school started this process back in June. And I asked all of the principals to be reflective as to, you guys saw their plans last year and their presentations. And the one thing I asked that we haven't asked before was that they give you information on how their plan went last year and how they developed their plan for this year. Because I think the continuity, it's not something that we start and finish each year in isolation. And having the same team and the same people at each building, I think was conducive to allowing that work to happen. So thank you guys for being here. I'm excited to hear from you. I will give them some cues. They have 20 minutes, so that you all know they have 20 minutes for their plan, and then they have a 10-minute Q&A, and then we'll go to the next person. So encourage you to ask questions at the end so that we can be efficient with our time. So thanks. So we randomly chose alphabetical order, so we will start with Cape Horn-Skye and the illustrious principal up at Cape, Brooke Henley. So go ahead, Brooke.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you so much, Board. It's always an honor to be able to share the great things that's happening at Cape Horn-Skye. So I wanted to share our school's mission. Cape Horn-Skye fosters strong relationships, personalized learning, and equitable opportunities to ensure learning without limits for all students. And we all at Cape really hold this near and dear to our hearts, especially the part that says all students. And that's really something that we're focusing on. Our mission statement was created with a lot of intention and meaning several years ago before I came on board. And so one thing that I hope to do is really embody this and also take another look at it and say, is this what we're currently doing? And maybe we need to look at it again and adjust it. I like themes, and each year I like to really hone in and focus on something that's meaningful for our staff and students. This year's theme is Kodiaks are all in, and we came up with that last year for a very important reason. We felt like the first year that I was principal there, 2 years ago, we were a new team, and so our theme was teamwork. The year after that, we were focusing on simplifying our work and just really making sure it was efficient. And then this year, we're still working on being a strong team. We're still simplifying our work, but now we're all thinking about what responsibility do we have in helping our school run very smoothly. So you can see a picture here of one of our teachers and two of our boosters. We're all in, even through our boosters. They are there for our Kodiaks. This was at our Ninja Warrior event recently, and it's just so nice to see our community come together all the time in service of our kids. I'm about to show you some longitudinal achievement data, and you can see in the data that's about to come. See an arrow going down, an arrow going up. Some of the data we can see going down, and some we can show going up and improving. So, which was really interesting to me in looking at that. Our data is something that the teachers and I are constantly looking at, analyzing all the way down to specific students. So this information and this data on the left, you can see the Smarter Balanced Assessment data from 2021 and 22, 22 and 23, and 23 and 24 in English language arts. So looking at how it has got increased, and then last year we saw it go down. And then we like to correlate that information, that's only for grades 3, 4, and 5, to the Fast Bridge information, and that's for all grades. And so we're looking at that going, okay, that went down and then up. So we ask the question, why is that? And what is happening that we have influence and control over that we can shape for our kids? Because we all want to make sure that everything that they're receiving is on grade level, and then they're also receiving supplemental support to make sure that's happening. Here, you can see on the right-hand side, there's the blue and green levels 3 and 4, which is at or above grade level, and then yellow and red, which are levels 1 and 2, that is approaching and then below grade level. So we're looking at that and wondering, okay, it went down and then that went up for the other grades. But overall, we had seen that achievement was decreasing. All right. And for math, longitudinal data for math, very similar with our Smarter Balanced. It went up and then it went down. And a very similar trend line in our Fast Bridge information as well. We recently had a data team meeting, and I like to get our teachers together with our support team in special education, our school psychologist, our counselor, and we really look at, okay, where are our kids right now? And one thing that they've noticed in our assessment, that kids are really achieving and showing higher achievement in math than ELA. And in the past, we've seen higher achievement in ELA. So I think that is due to our focus on it lately in the last few years, and we're really intentional about that. And our third piece of data that we're looking at over time is our behavior. So our overall amount of referrals, our average referrals per day has been decreasing over the past few years. And you can see in 22, 23, that's as far back as I could find, there was an average of almost 2.5 referrals per day. Last year, we saw just under 2 referrals per day. So that's great to see that it is decreasing. You can kind of see over the whole course of the year. You start off in September, everyone's getting to know one another and the expectations, and then October, November, our true colors come out and everyone gets comfortable and they're rocking and rolling with their reading. And then right through the middle of winter, we're cruising right along. And then at the end of the year, we have some more energy in the spring. So more energy. Some more information and data that is very important to us is the Washington School Improvement Framework. And that is something that's calculated on the state level from data over time. And you can see areas that we've had some growth and success in. I wanted to highlight the area where it's the students with disabilities. So it's still in a color of like orangish reddish, which is an area of focus and concern that we really make sure that we're doing as much as we can. But over time, it's grown. And so kids are making great growth. And I'm really pleased with the program that we have and support for kids with disabilities. The overall Washington State report card that you can pull up on OSPI shows a lot of information. And I like to really dive in and see, okay, tell me some more about that. One thing that's an area to focus on is attendance. Since COVID, we saw attendance kind of change, and we're asking why and how come, all the way down to groups of kids, family need, and setting goals for individual students so that they're interested in coming to school, they feel successful, and they feel connected. That is one area where the two arrows are, as Tracy McLaughlin had shared a couple of weeks ago at her presentation. There's a different way that the state is reporting the data, and I'm currently diving in to really understand that a little bit more, and also how that will transfer to our goal setting and what our scores mean. So I've just shared some data points with you that are overall the consistent grade level knowledge, but it's kind of shifting to more of the foundational knowledge, which is higher percentage, which we all want to see. I just want to make sure that that is consistent and accurate to what we're seeing in the classrooms too. So just something I'm aware of, and I'm really trying to dig in to better understand that. So at Cape Horn-Skye, some of the strengths that we have our 5th grade science smarter balance scores have been very, very strong. Students with disabilities and the WSIF, which I just had shown you. Our climate and culture at the school is very strong. We're all very proud to be on staff, and our families are proud to be a part of our community. Kids they know what's expected of them. We have a very strong PBIS, or positive behavioral intervention and support system. Staff are flexible. They're ready to pivot and do whatever they can do to be all in for our kids at any time. Our teachers collaborate weekly at their PLC meetings naturally. They are just saw some teachers collaborating today, and I absolutely love it. And I highlight it and I say, oh, you're collaborating. I love it. It's the best. Our volunteers and our boosters do everything that they can to make it fun and to support our school. Our mindset around learning is there. Everyone really wants to make sure that we're here to learn and our school systems are safe and supportive. You can see a copy of our, just at a glance, our school schedule. It's real busy. We have a lot going on, which is one of our challenges. We have a lot in our day to take into account. And with those challenges, are the ELA growth
Mhm.
and the math growth that we were concerned about and that we really need to focus on. So there's that, there's the data. Now what? I'd like to ask, okay, there's this information. Now what are we going to do about it? And here is what we're going to do. Explain our goals a little bit. So in the left-hand corner, you can see, I'm going to reference, that's the slide that I had talked about it. And then the whole slide, and at the bottom is the goal that's in the school improvement plan. For English language arts, using both the early reading levels that the FastBridge the first grade and kindergarten takes a different kind of a test for early learners. And then grades two through 5 take a different test as well. So you just kind of can average it out. This fall, the early was at 58% and 2 through 5 grades were at 57%. So my goal would be that 70% of students in grades K through 5 will score above the low risk mark, which is the 30th percentile, the green and the blue, from fall 2024 right now through this spring in 2025. And how are we going to do that? We have a program called Sunday that is utilized in our learning assistance program. And I've heard from teachers the past few years how they're curious about it. And when kids go to the lab room or the resource room, they receive this intensive support. It's really effective. We've seen growth with it. So teachers are wondering, I want to know how to do that. So we've just recently trained them at our staff meeting. So they have materials that actually you can find online for parents to use at home. So we have a more condensed version. And consistency is the key. So when kids are receiving something in the learning assistance program room, they can also receive that similar kind of language and method within the classroom. We feel that that's just one way that we can help increase our growth in ELA. We're focusing on foundational skills. Digging through the data, we've really noticed that in ELA, we really need to think about fluency. So how fast and fluid we're reading and accurate as well. Is part of fluency, and then the phonemic awareness. So their understanding of how the sounds are, how it sounds to you orally, and how they're putting all of those sounds together to start the early reading. We have a WIN time, which stands for what I need for every grade level that receives support, and it's built right into our schedule so that kids leave during a time that's not core instruction, and they get exactly what they need. You can see in the pictures right here, they're receiving that Sunday curriculum, which is great. The question also becomes, well, what's the rest of the class doing? What are the other kids doing? The hope is something kind of similar, but also really focused on those foundational skills and really what the students need. Some of them need an extra challenge and to be pushed a little bit farther because they might be reading above grade level. So that's a wonderful time to do that, 30 minutes per day. Our professional learning communities are also looking at those 3 essential standards in each grade level and honing in on those. Very similar with math. Our goal is 80% of students in grades K through 5. As you can see in the early math levels, we're at 90% at or above. That is amazing. Look at that right there, the middle left, the large green bar and blue. And similarly with grades 2 through 5 at 73%. kids are coming in this year with strong math skills. We want to continue to build on that. The action steps are very similar to English language arts. I feel like the more different programs and the more we are throwing at kids and teachers, they can get kind of confused, and the theory is that there's not going to be as much growth. So illustrative mathematics is a commitment that the school has made in order to make sure that in our core instruction for all, they receive the same type of instruction, the same language. Another foundational skills focus, fluency and number sense. I wanted to share that in all of the teachers' evaluations, that whole process, they have to set a SMART goal, and all of our teachers have committed to a foundational skill, mostly in math and some in ELA. Just really depends on what their students need. So I honor that, and I think that's a wonderful idea. We have folded in a math win time, 30 minutes per day. Some grades receive support from a paraeducator and some don't, and that's okay. We're still learning about how we can utilize volunteers, utilize the staff we do have. Maybe we need to trade amongst the teachers in that grade level or another grade level. So people are getting creative and finding ways to give kids that skills work that they need. And also working through the PLC process. The goal for social, emotional, and behavioral is that referrals at Cape Horn-Skye will decrease from the daily average last year of 1.1 to 1.5, 1.5 per day. And over the course of the whole year, it's really interesting to keep an eye on and continue to monitor. We have teams that continually look at that. And just from September, October, so I think last week, we're averaging less than 1 per day, which is great. How will we continue to do that? I have a weekly social emotional video that aligns with our weekly and monthly themes. You can see a little snip right there of a video that I send out to all of the staff and students, and that really helps echo what it is that we're wanting to see. School-wide teaching has been strengthened. You can see on the right-hand side, we have some middle schoolers, some Canyon Creek kids from next door. In the leadership class, they came over and made a video on how to be responsible in the cafeteria. And all the kids loved it. They love seeing the big kids showing what, what they can do to help the whole campus. It's important to us. We reinforce those areas that need improvement, and I've included a lunch and learn time, special time with me, and then also increasing supervision around campus. It's very important. Created a little mobile cart for myself, so I'm wheeling around and trying to be in as many places as possible. So that's how we're hoping to achieve our goals. Do you have any questions for me? Yeah.
First off, thank you. I can really put a lot of thought in this. I'm curious. I saw the classroom size number for 23-24, which was 23.3 students. So do we know what that was in 22-23? Roughly the same.
I don't know. That's a great question.
Because I'm just trying to draw correlations of what might have caused the decrease. Like, what do you think? Was it a change in teacher availability because their classes got larger? Or do we have insight into that? If I were to ask you what you think the top drivers were for the decrease.
Great question. I do not know the average class size for that year, but I'll look that up for you. My theory, and I think the teachers, and just in talking with them, I think the consistency and what we were doing is a reason. So that's one area that we're really trying to kind of hone in on, but also the foundational skills. I keep asking them, what is it that kids really need? Where are we needing to focus? And over last year, we heard that they needed that time. And it used to be that during our core instructional time, like the 90 minutes per day in ELA, you could just go back a couple grade levels and give them that, but we can't really do that. We need to keep them on the grade level standard and then intervene with the skills that they need in order to. So it's a challenge. It's really hard to navigate that, but having that time to give those skills and be a little bit more intentional about it. It's the theory.
Yeah. And then you mentioned the schedule was a challenge. Can you tell me a little more about it?
Yeah, great. So we want to make sure that we're maximizing every minute of our learning time. And we have 2 lunch periods this year. One really positive change that we've made is recess before lunch. And to do that takes a little bit of puzzling around to do it. So it's been a little bit difficult, but overall the feedback has been good. Kids get the wiggles out and they come back in to learn. There has to be more of a transitional period to like go through the lunch line and things like that. Another one is I really wanted to fit in some math win time, not just for ELA, but to add math intervention. So we kind of had to squeeze that in. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, but they're all in. Everyone's doing great.
One last question.
Yes.
My only other one was, is there any concern that in trying to drive down referrals, teachers are going to feel more pressure not to refer someone that maybe they really should refer because they are being disruptive to the class and negatively impacting others?
Great question. I've always wondered that because you can have a number of referrals written, and then I've been vocal to the students. Hey, our goal this month, let's have it be fewer, but I also want to be really accurate with the teachers, and we don't want them to not write referrals just to have that number down. I will definitely know if that's the case. There's ways to know if there are referral type of behaviors happening, just in things you hear, things you see around campus, in the classrooms. So I really appreciate that you mentioned that, because it's less about the numbers and really it's about how safe kids are feeling and how they're acting. Thank you. Jim?
Thanks. Quick follow-up. I was going to ask about schedule. Yeah, you answered that. But on the behavior, you identify recess and classroom disruptions as major areas.
Yes.
And my question is, do you track the people issuing the referrals? And if so, do you do something to help those people to manage kids on the playground or to minimize classroom disruption?
Yes, absolutely. We do. We track when our referrals are entered into a system. It shows us the location and which classes are needing a little extra support. We have a stat process, and that team of individuals looks over the information, but also teachers can refer either students to that just for additional support. Hey, I'm dealing with this. I really need assistance. And then also my counselor and we meet regularly and talk over that and look at the referrals and think, okay, how can we then assist that group and that teacher as well? So yeah, the thing about recess has been hands-on, has been something that we've really noticed. And so been talking to them a lot about it. It's not always hands-on, like to hurt each other. It's
Talking
to get physical.
Yes.
students.
Talking to them, who? The kids or the supervisors?
The kids
Okay.
and the teachers. And in my video, they know. Hands to know.
I personally use the term hands-on. We can't be hands-on.
Hands on. I know. And it's something that we even research. You know, it's natural for young people to be physical, but we don't want anyone hurt. We want everyone to feel safe. Yeah.
Young kids, right?
Yes.
You have my time.
Sorry, I just put something in my mouth, but I guess one of the questions I have maybe for everyone is on some of these, I mean, it's good to have goals, but I guess I often wonder for some of these, at what point is it no longer realistic to have a goal of behavior? Like you get to a certain point and there's just gonna be like a baseline that is inevitable. So at what point do you say, yeah, I think we've reached it and we're good? Like, I don't, that make any sense?
That does. I appreciate you bringing that up, and I believe in a little saying it's constant pursuit of better. We're not at 100%. We're not. I don't want people to feel like everyone needs to be perfect, but there's always ways for us to improve, and we share that with the kids too. And taking feedback and really looking at the things that aren't working, you know, sharing some data that could be better. It's okay, and it shows we still have to have. There's a baseline, but then also it's okay to question and wonder and improve.
Thank you. I always love, you're so like animated. I just love listening to you. You're so cute. I love, just gonna tell you a few things. I love the all in. I love how you have different things every year. I think that's fantastic. I think that's like the beginning of the year. I think that's great. And then the win time. I think that's amazing. And I think it's cool because you can help those kids that maybe are moving ahead. Because I think sometimes we forget that there are kids that are above. They're, you know, and need to be pushed ahead even further. So I think that's really great that you're doing that. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brooke.
Yes.
Thanks for keeping it in the time allotment. Thanks to the board. Appreciate that. We'll transition now to our next presentation. So we'll give us about a minute.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
I need to introduce you
Oh,
first.
sorry.
Ready to go.
I was like, let's go. Keep that.
I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce Hannah Hartman. This is Hannah's second year with us as the principal at CRGE. So we welcome you. We welcome you as a member of our team, of course. So go ahead, Hannah. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here and I love being in year two. So I can share kind of where we're at, where we were able to accomplish last year and then where we're taking off and our goals for going forward at CRGE. Sorry. So last year as a new principal in our building, it was important for me to connect with our staff and our community and get to know who we were. So we started the year off by exploring what our core values are and what made us who we are and how that was going to drive the work that we were doing together and to kind of pull us together as a team. We wanted to have that intentionality into the decisions we were making, the data we were observing, and the plans that we were creating together to move forward. So this is that kind of wordle of that, what was coming to the surface for us as we were exploring that as a staff. On the left, you'll see some demographics and just some numbers for CRGE. We have about 350 kids. It's one left yesterday, two more came today. So we hover around that number. And then we have a number of certificated staff and classified staff seeing and serving our students. We have 17% served in our ML or ELL population for English language learners in our building. And we have 19% of our population that's served with an IEP. And this year it was a change for our building because we were able to qualify for the whole building to be on free and reduced lunches due to the number of percentage of students qualifying for that, which has been wonderful. Our kids are fed every day and coming in ready to learn this year. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So one of the first things we did after we explored our core values is we really focused on what is going to be our vision and mission. And so we looked at where do we want to go with our kiddos and how are we going to get there? So CRG is a learning community that knows, nurtures, and challenges all students to reach their full potential. And similarly to what Brooke shared with Kate, that word all is very, very important because we want to have an inclusive environment, a place where all students feel belonging and feel safety. And our mission of how we were going to get ourselves there was really about CRG providing a safe learning environment with meaningful relationships where all students become learners with a growth mindset. And that growth mindset, we think, is really critical to how our community needs to work on our improvement going forward, but also how we want to instill in our students, if it's a behavior thing that comes up, that this is a learning opportunity. So we don't continue that same behavior, that when there's a challenge that we're faced, that we're ready to take a deep breath and to step up to those challenges and face them. We've really focused a lot about following the awesome Otter way, emphasizing just that kind of behavior in our community of being safe, being respectful, being responsible, and being kind in all that we're doing. So that through line is consistent in every single classroom, every single activity that we're doing. We're making that reference and drawing that connection for our kiddos. And then I included our CRGE norms, which are professional agreements that we've built as a community, also to just have open and clear communication, to be organized with our time, focused on tasks, assuming positive intent, being team focused, but also being flexible when that's needed, and valuing opportunities to grow and learn from each other. And so this is the way that we've framed everything that we do professionally going forward, but also the way that we want to be engaging with our professional work in our community as well. And so we created this kind of foundation in my first year, and this is something that we were able to kind of just reinforce and highlight and then make a move forward. We became a school identified in the Washington School Improvement Framework as a school for improvement based on the 3 years of data prior to my arrival last year. And so that was identified in the spring of this year, or winter kind of spring of last year. And so the reason why our school was identified, when you look at the data that's on this graph, is really that we were below the benchmark, the identifier, in 2 categories for our school. And so you can see here the 2019, 22, and 23 school years, and then the breakdown of categories. And so for our English language learners, and then also for our students with disabilities, were those areas that we were identified in. And so with that knowledge, we have really tried to focus in on those areas, especially around being an inclusive school, having the mindset they're all our kiddos and we want to teach them and help them all grow and learn. We want to also grow our capacity to serve all students, and what's good for a student that's learning English is good for all students. And so that's kind of been some things that we've been focusing on as we've kicked off this year and as we've launched into our new goals for school improvement. So I'll start with our first category of climate and culture as a school. Last year, our goal was to move 25% of our some risk students to low risk, which would be above benchmark by the spring. the way that we were able to work on that was to identify who were those kiddos that had the highest level of risk and be very intentional on the supports that we're serving them with, but also in the way that we're providing those supports across the board for all kiddos. We focused on relationships. We focused on having training and opportunities for staff to work on de-escalation and how to develop more self-regulation skills in their classroom. We tried to be very intentional with our social emotional learning curriculum and use it with fidelity across the school. We focused on having that preserved time at the start of every day for those connections to happen and for class meetings to be implemented. And we were very intentional with our PBIS approaches to celebrate accomplishments and to look at our students growing and to acknowledge that work. We had meetings regularly to look at tiered interventions for kiddos and supports that were needed for our students to be able to make those improvements. And our PLCs were really focused on the essential standards and the learning targets to their curriculum, visibly taking, like we tried to tighten things up with our PLC work. And we had increased student leadership opportunities with the implementation of clubs and activities that we had during the course of the school day for students' involvement, which had a very high percentage of students wanting to join in and help give back to their community, which has been a great part of the culture that we're creating. So when you look at the data here, we can see from fall of last year to fall of this year, we have made improvements in this area. But what I would say is the biggest improvement with our social emotional learning, I think, is the consistency that's been there with having a principal for 2 years and having staff that have worked with the principal for 2 years. Previously, CRGE had 3 different principals over 3 different years, and after a time of coming out of the pandemic, which was already a disruption to learning. So I think just that consistency has been a breath of fresh air for the hallways in our building. Kids are positively engaging with one another and are understanding the expected behaviors across the school and helping to reinforce that with each other, which is really critical for some shifts and changes to occur. Some of our students that have had the biggest challenges are able to manage conflict without needing as much adult intervention or support. They're also being able to have more minutes in their classroom where they're staying regulated and having those coping strategies. So it's been a million times better this year as a new person to have those relationships already established with all of those kiddos, to be able to reference things from last year in our conversations as we're learning and growing in different areas. When we were thinking about this goal for this year and what our school needed next, because we did the theme the first year was like biting off more than you can chew, sort of, because we had such ambitious plans and we could not quite do everything, but we were really, how can we focus in and really get to the heart of what our kids really need that's going to help have the biggest lasting impact of them going forward. And so we, as a team, collaborated and decided on the tool of using the zones of regulation as a way to help. And we think 99% of our kids will be able to use it effectively by the end of the year to identify their mood and to be able to have at least one strategy to get themselves out of a mood. And so this has been a way to create consistent common vocabulary in our building. It's been a way to check in with all kids where doesn't matter if they're in PE or if they're visiting the counselor or if they're popping into the office. We are all being consistent with this language with them and being able to identify that just like growth mindset, we can grow out of a bad mood. We can grow. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to make a choice that's not our best, but we're going to learn from it. We're going to grow from it. And so that's been a great approach, I think, that's serving our community well this year and that the students are receiving very well. I break our school improvement plan down into 3 categories, and I think about what are we doing as teachers, what are we doing for our students, or what are they receiving in that, and then what is the commitment or the ask of our community to support that school improvement. And so For our teachers, we're having that consistent language around zones of regulation daily. We're also tracking our students' success and how well they are using these tools on a monthly basis and reviewing that data so we can support individuals that may need it. We're really working on those relationships, that modeling, and those collaboration opportunities around these areas. And then for our students, they're just getting more consistency, more frequency, more accountability to this kind of social emotional learning. They're getting that care that people want to hear how they're doing and that they can empathize and understand where they're at. They're getting more leadership opportunities from the start of the year, because last year we had to kind of start them as we could get the year rolling a little bit. We were able to kick the year off with fifth grade leaders every day doing our announcements. And we have created like a scope and sequence of social emotional learning that everybody is contributing to and that can be consistent, including our monthly assemblies with myself, our monthly grade level learning with the counselor. And we've been doing that as grade levels on a regular basis. And then we have weekly classroom lessons. So that's pretty comprehensive for our student of those opportunities. And then in our community, we've partnered with our boosters to look at having a community event for every one of our areas for improvement. And so one of our ideas is we have a regular bingo night, but we talked about adding in a social emotional strategy between each game. So that way we're helping to share a strategy with parents and with families that are in our community. So they might be able to take that home and use it in their setting as well. We also are incorporating monthly parent education, like a spotlight on social emotional, and sharing what we're doing in the classroom so they have those tools and resources at home and we can have that common language. And when we move on to English language arts, this is our kind of biting off more than we can chew, but we were focusing on having 70% of students above the benchmark for English language arts. We were working again on our professional learning communities, making sure that we were focusing on those foundational skills of inferencing and checking for understanding, having direct instruction for our students, having more opportunities for students to write and build stamina, and trying to make learning fun was a key that we focused on. This shows our data from the longitudinal data from 2022 to 2024 and where we were at. And then this is just zooming on our reading data for this year. And so this drives our goal for this year, that we want to have our students increase their achievement by 10% or above in FastBridge and Smarter Balance, so that we can continue to lift our students from high risk to some risk higher, but then also provide extensions and learning opportunities for our students that are already above the benchmark to be motivated and excited about learning. Here is our summative assessment data for our ELA scores for the end of last year. And so we want to just continue to work on shifting our students to even higher levels so that we can pull students out of our red and our intentional interventions. Breaking it down to what that actually looks like as a school, we are accessing more diverse student reading materials. So we're working on providing libraries that can access what students need in the classroom so it's readily available, and that we can have links to resources for home as well. We are started a monthly tracking kind of data and tiered interventions for our kiddos, and we're promoting reading engagement across content. For our students, we're trying to encourage and support reading for pleasure. We're working on increasing student choice in reading and voice in that. We're celebrating reading. So we have some different celebrations that are happening. We started a home reading challenge. So month by month, we're rewarding students at our monthly assembly and celebrating them for reading at home and tracking that. So that I've already heard from parents today that that's the best thing ever. Their kids are already reading so many more books at home. And so we know that that will benefit them. We are asking them, or we're helping to access resources for them. This year, we're working with our boosters again for our biggest fundraiser to make a whole month of February about reading and do a readathon as that but big fundraiser event. So we're already collaborating on so many fun ways to engage and make joyful reading for kiddos and with families to be a part of that. And we're also trying to spotlight reading practice and best practice and sharing resources with families. In the area of mathematics, our goal was very similar, the 70% above benchmark and moving kids from high risk to some risk and some risk to low risk. And we focused on the area of number sense last year and trying to see math in the real world and intentional partnering with students and working on visible thinking strategies to help all students be accessing math. This year, you can see our data for math. Over time, there has also been a bit of a decrease, but we stayed level with our spring from the previous year. And so what we're focusing on now is really trying to see a 10% improvement in math in FastBridge and Smarter Balance scores. Looking at this graph, you can see our Smarter Balance score, our summative assessment scores for SBAC for last year, the end of last year. And when we look at what that looks like in our plan of how to make the improvements, we have created consistent use of illustrative math curriculum and resources, which is happening across the school now. We are tracking math and doing data and interventions in that win time that we have provided in the schedule. We went just Friday. We had a teacher representative scheduled for every single grade level that went to a conference called Empowering, or it was called Empowering with Inquiry. Crafting Inquiry was a conference, and it was about empowering our students through using inquiry so everyone can access the learning and we can meet them where they're at and we can help get their thirst for learning and following their inquiries and building their skills. This was the lesson that was followed up by that because of the research through Joe Bowler, who is an author and a wonderful mathematician herself. She says that if we just teach kids to group things and have this math sense, they are showing to score even better. And so this is what our first graders produced when they were tasked with that challenge. And so when we use some tasks to challenge our students to think differently about math, we make it more creative and more accessible to all students. We also reframe their negative thinking about math as something that's fixed, that I can or I can't do, or I'm born with a math brain or I'm not. So we're really focusing on helping kids to think about math and their thinking around math, building learning and making connections. And so using individual partner games and activities and celebrating the thinking and learning around math. We are planning also an event to incorporate to our science night some math, so we can have math games and activities for families, and then also sharing a spotlight in our regular communication around math and sharing resources with home to have that connection with homeschool. We are really just about trying to build our capacity and systems to support all students and having ways that we can provide those checks and balances that we're able to achieve the results that we need to for all kiddos, and just being flexible to tweak what's needed as the time comes to accommodate the needs that we have in our building. We really want to have that equity to education and that opportunity for all kids to learn. So we've been focusing on how can we use a universal design when we're looking at our instruction for all kiddos to be able to access and have choice and to learn and grow. Any questions?
Let's start down there this time.
We'll just go this way. It's easy.
I actually don't have any questions. I think the zones are amazing, especially using like something that's common in Inside Out 2 just came out. So I'm sure the kids love it and identify with it. And I got to see your math in action when I took a tour. One of your teachers was teaching fractions with like a, what was that, a piece of yarn and moving the fractions around. Very cool. So I can seeing it in action and how excited the kids got to show us was really neat to see.
It's great. Thank you.
I have just a general question. It's going to be for all of you really, but what are there resources that you don't have that would help move the needle on our student performance? That, I mean, I'm not, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But
Well,
we are what we are, and you know, it'd be nice if we see 60, 70, 80% of the kids that are at at that blue and green zone as opposed to 40%.
What I can speak to for my building is really that I know being identified as a school for improvement with the Washington School Improvement Framework is not something to celebrate, but it is something that does come with some support
Right.
and some funding that is part of the reason why we can be, I think, making more ground on these goals, because we have the ability to buy all of that curriculum so that everyone's using the same resource. We have the ability to go to an inspiring conference that people can bring back and share resources from. So we're able to utilize the funding that's coming through that to, I think, maximize our benefits. And then the trick will be, how can we make sure that we're creating sustainable changes that aren't dedicated to this funding. So when that funding goes away, we can still implement and do all the things that we need to, and people feel the support to move forward with that. So I'm always mindful when we talk about it with our building leadership team and we look at our plan. Our school has a building leadership team that's focused more on the math and the reading goals. And we have an equity team that's focused more on our PBIS, social emotional, PBIS thing, or I said PBS, but they're focused more on those goals for social emotional. And so when we look at that together, we're always asking that question. So when the funding's not here, is this something we can sustain, or what can we do to make sure that we're going to be able to still utilize this? Or if a new teacher walked in tomorrow, that they're not going to miss out on that. And so in my bigger picture thinking, I'm planning, there was a section of our staff that got a really great learning opportunity that was outside of our building to provide. In my plan for next year's school improvement, I want to utilize other staff members that weren't a part of that to focus in on another area of our goals to share learning and to get that same experience, so it can be motivating and inspiring for everyone and continue the work forward.
Thanks. Not a completely unrelated question on referrals. Are your referrals kind of running along the same lines as the Upriver School?
So
Couple a day, or
we're a little bit of a bigger school, so I think we have a little bit of higher data around that, but definitely over the course of last year, there was a decline in our referrals for students. And more importantly, there's been an opportunity to see where there are issues. And so we just started a PBIS campaign with our cafeteria. And just as a way to positively promote behaviors we need to see in line, we made it like a cafeteria challenge. So 2 grade levels enter on 2 different sides, and our supervision team is tallying the class that did the best job following agreements. And then after they get 10 tallies, they're getting a free seat lunch day. And so that's very motivating for them. We had problems with how they were lining up, and then kids were getting into a little bit of conflicts in that process. So now we told them that there's, we're keeping data on which lines are lining up and doing all the right things. And so I do similar videos to promote this new campaign, and then we are going to reinforce it in our assembly. And same like with attendance, we're doing data and we're raising the attention of the kids. And I just said, hey, we had a conflict in the lunch line. What do you guys want to do about it? How can we be problem solvers and fix this so nobody else has the same problem and help everybody? And so we're just framing it that way.
thanks.
A comment and a question and a suggestion all wrapped together. In each of these, you have outcomes, but the outcomes are really processes in that under social emotional learning, you have as an outcome relationships. But how do you know when you establish good relationships? So my suggestion is for each of these under social emotional learning and under math data and under reading, you have outcomes, change that to processes, and then determine how you're going to figure out whether those processes have worked.
Mm-hmm.
It's a challenge. And my feeling is you've identified what will really work to get to where you want to go. I just suggest you dive a little bit deeper in your data gathering.
Thank you.
Heidi, do you have anything? No, I'll just mention, so my son knows this already, I can see him writing some of the stuff now, I'm very excited about it. It is making its way, like, at least, you know. Registering, and he is excited.
That's
Just
good.
wanted to provide that feedback.
Thank you.
Couple quick things. The information that you put on the front about your student, how many students you have and served with IEP and whatnot. I would love to have that for everybody. If everybody could share that with us, I think that's really good
Yes.
information. So thank you for doing that, and I would love to see that from
Yeah,
everybody. if you
and
could.
I think that's a Tracy question.
Yeah,
And
I'd like
actually-
to know the data for the 4 schools.
Right, and you actually get that on the report card. If you go to that page and each one of them.
so
have
each one
that
will have
page.
it. Okay,
Yes.
I just didn't see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not
Um,
maybe spelled out like Hannah has done
Okay,
it, but
but
yes,
it's in
it is
there.
on there.
Okay, perfect. That was great information. I love the readathon that you guys did last year. The robot was amazing. That was last year, right? And then is that what you guys are gonna do again? Something similar?
So the
Was
wild robot was our all school reads.
Okay.
And so this year, what we determined is that we don't want to fundraise after multiple events.
Oh, gotcha.
And so we did the laps for learning, and so the feedback was maybe we want to look at a different option.
Mhm.
And so we're trying to tie it to the civic plan and school academic work. So we talked about maybe the readathon is the way that we encourage that fundraiser event to happen. And so it's more timely and spread out as well.
Yeah, I think the kids really enjoy, I like you having that take it home. I just think is fun to read with your kids too. And I liked that. Anyways, that was it for me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. Thanks for staying within the time frame. Nice job.
So we're halfway through. My suggestion is to stand up. Maybe just kind of, yes, we haven't, that's
I know,
gonna be,
like-
you've been sitting for an hour, so go ahead and stand up and just stretch a little bit.
Just. I eat those like. You know, the funny thing though is this is my favorite one, so I eat all these first. And then we have a competitive now and with clients. Really? I like a long time no see. Did you do that? Oh, now go back to Zoom. We need standing desks. We get somebody to donate this.
Maybe.
Like,
Oh, yeah, I get a mechanical one.
and so actually make it full screen. And then share.
Treadmill underneath.
No.
That is not as effective
And then
as
you're
like
gonna
typing and
do that.
walking at the same time.
Challenge.
It is, more challenging than
And I
you think, and
would-
people don't
yeah,
like to
I
see
would
move when you're on video
so-
calls, so it's like.
And then minimize it. Yeah. And then.
But I'm having enough challenges, I don't. You should be able to just select a clicker, and so then I try to type them.
Well, I don't know.
Wow.
How did you proceed your slides?
I had to,
No,
like,
probably from.
yeah,
such a-
when
my
you-
husband drafted.
because I thought I
Drafted
would
it
use
in
tap
the-
here.
it's like leaving it
Yeah,
for-
I had to click it. Tap, try to do this.
Yeah.
It's not work.
Yeah.
Be Slightly,
Yeah.
slightly into the 6 o'clock, which is.
Yeah.
Good
My children.
I mean, I
idea.
love sugar
It's-
notes,
it's-
but I just.
yeah,
Just make sure
I
I
did
did
errors,
I didn't.
Touching.
And honestly,
Okay.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Tracy,
All right.
take it away.
I'd like to, next is Gause Elementary School. I want to take this opportunity to introduce Tammy Kolb. This is her 6th year, right?
Seventh.
So,
At
7th
Gause.
year, oh, at
And
Gause,
ninth in the
excuse me.
district. Yeah.
Thank you. So Tammy, take it away.
Thanks, Tracy. So I'm excited to be here this evening to present to you. When we talk about SID plan, I also think of it as action research and what do we learn from all the data that we collect and the programs, the systems we have in place. So exciting to have time just to present and talk more about that in depth. So thank you. Here's kind of the format for my presentation, foundation. So presenting our why or our purpose.
data, evidence of the need, goals based on our needs from the data, and conclusions, questions, and comments. So, here's our demographics for Gause. We have 242 students enrolled, free and reduced. We had 41%, and similar to Hannah, this is our first year of all free meals for students at Gause, which is exciting. We have seen an increase in students participating in the breakfast program. I think that's a good component as to why we have seen that go up. The meals are amazing. If you haven't tried them, I encourage you to come and visit. But and then lunches have gone really, really well. I often see students bring their own lunch and then also go and get a school lunch too. So we want them to try it and see what they try it out. Certain days are definitely more popular when it's pizza day, which was last week was a National School Lunch Week. So I got to serve my students lunch dressed as a pirate, and it was a lot of fun. But we had a lot of kids go through that day because of pizza and being Pirate Week, I think. Special education, IUPs 21% at Gause, and English language learners or MLL 1.7%. And this slide gives me joy because I went into a first grade class and we have a K1 blend in our building this year and a first grade, and they are teaming really well together, and they wanted to do a science lesson. And so the teacher was instructing in first grade on the scientific inquiry method. And here students are partnering up. They're doing a constellation on this particular activity, but just working together, the collaboration, the understanding of how our solar system works, and then the scientific inquiry method. And I remember when I was a teacher, third grade, that was something I introduced, and you can't introduce it soon enough to get the vocabulary and the concept down of how scientific inquiry works. So it was just exciting to see that. Our vision at Gause, and that drives the work that we do, is Gause builds the foundation for student success. And at Gause, we will work with home and community to provide all students with opportunities to reach their full potential, academically, socially, emotionally, and physically. So that was put in place, it's probably been 3 or 4 years while I was at Gause, and we haven't swayed from it. And I think it maybe next year they might want to bring it back around and look to see, is there any tweaks we want to make in it at this point? But for now, it really does encompass the work we do, and as emphasized, it is all students are always our goal, not just some, but all. Here's our state report card. So as you take a look at this over the last 3 years, it started in 2019, we too are a school of improvement this year. And really we're focusing, looking specifically at our students with disabilities. We need to be moving the dial for them and showing that we can support them in reaching the same as all their peers. And also low income is another area of need in there. So when we look at data, we are trying to disaggregate that more and seeing what are we doing. And I agree, what we do for some students is good for all students. So while it is not the, it's not something you really aspire to do, there are benefits, and it's a wake-up call. And it also just charges the work, like this sense of urgency. We cannot wait. This needs to happen for all kids. And the data does not lie. So it's been good in that way for Gause to have more in-depth conversations around how our students are performing and what are we doing, what shifts are we making our instruction and student learning. So back last year, as a reflection for our goal for last year, the goal was by the end of 2023-2024 school year, 80% of Gause students in grades 3 through 5 will meet or exceed the 3 essential standards in the ELA as identified by Washougal School District grade level teams. And when I started the presentation of talking about action research, this is something we learned when we set out. Our team decided this would be good. There was intentional work behind the PLC work that we have been doing to identify the process we've used to identify the 3 essential standards, development of common assessments, common form of assessments amongst our professionals, our grade level teams, and then a scope and sequence put in place. On this one, we didn't have a systematic way to collect our data. So that's what we discovered was they're teaching all the standards, they are teaching to these standards. But when they went together, that was the work that was put in scheduled for this summer. So that work did happen in August. They came together, they had time to look at a scope and sequence for ELA, to develop that further, to work further on their formative assessments that they're implementing this year. And so the goal this year is to come together as grade level teams across the district and look how kids are doing across the district. So that one I didn't have is the systematic data on that particular area. But I can show you how we did in the SBAC ELA over the last 3 years. So as you can see, exceeds and meets. It has grown. It's the last 2 years, it's stayed pretty constant in the blue area of meets or exceeds 20 to 21% from 17 3 years ago. In the area of meets, we last year or 2 years ago, we increased to 31%. We did drop back down to 20% last year. So taking a look at why that might be, what's going on, what did we do that worked and not moving away, maybe looking at that again and adding into that with our essential standards. And then as far as almost meets, 3 years ago was our highest at 28%. It went down 2 years ago and 19%. And last year we were back up to 27% as almost meets, headed towards the green and the blue. But our at-risk has pretty much stayed consistent. So that's an area of concern to me. Why are we seeing that as the constant and not moving the dial to move our kids forward into the other areas? So it's something we're paying attention to, and this is across all 3 grade levels. And here is our FastBridge data from last year, fall to spring, from 2nd grade to 5th. So as you can see, the blue area stayed pretty consistent in 2nd grade. It went up and by the spring, which is always a hope that we have. The red decreased there. So that was in our yellow, slowly went down from the fall. And in 3rd grade, we saw a decrease in red by spring. The blue stayed pretty consistent. Green kind of shrunk from the winter. So then we have to say what might have been impacted. I know it's not an excuse, it just kind of helps explain it sometimes. In May is a big testing month. So they take the SBAC in 3rd grade for the first time, and then they're also taking FastBridge. It's just a fact that we do. And so you kind of have to look to see what might have been going on there that could cause a little bit of a dip. We're not sure on that. And then across to 4th grade, you can see that there was a decrease in the red as well. Big increase in the yellow. The green stayed close to the same, a little bit of increase, a little bit of dip in the blue. But we did see a decrease in the red from fall to winter into spring. And the same in 5th grade. We took a decrease in the red, which is the most at risk. And the yellow grew just a little bit from winter. Green increased and blue stayed similar. So kind of interesting to look across and see the patterns from where they come in the fall and where they go in the spring. But of course, our goal is always to decrease the red, but it'd be nice to have a few as possible in the red for sure. That's always our goal. And then early reading for kindergarten. Kindergartners don't take early reading until winter. So you only see 2 bars here. So you can see there was a slight increase in the red in kindergarten last year, and in the yellow, and the green dropped off. So we're working, the kindergarten teachers are aware of this, and looking to see what do we need to really hone in on those skills from winter to spring, even starting in fall. We have some interventions taking place currently, right from your.
Hey, we have a board meeting. Can you, sorry, yeah, it's just kind of loud right here. So can you just hold off on vacuuming? Thank you.
I was like,
So.
yeah. But thank you. We appreciate you.
And then,
Yes, that was good, wasn't
Yeah, I
it?
was thinking you're super kind.
and then for our first graders, you can see there is an increase in red. So definitely our K1 is what we really want to pay close attention to. Although when we do school-wide goals, you know, a lot of times we set them for 3rd through 5th like we did last year, but really as a staff, we talked about, it's really it's a K5. It's a K5 work that we have to do. We can't wait until 3rd grade to see something change. And so we need to pay attention to how they're doing in kindergarten and 1st grade. Those are foundational skills that have to pay attention to, and we have to be intervening early for our students with that. And so our goal for this year, by the end of the 24-25 school year, based on current student data in grades K through 5, we will increase the percentage of students reaching the 55th percentile or above on the FastBridge ELA by 20%. And the reason why that is important is if they do that, by the time they're in 3rd grade, they're more likely to get a 3 or a 4. So that's a specific goal with that in mind. Some action steps that we are taking, we are implementing across the board 6-week intervention cycles within the classroom. And our master schedule, that's one thing this year, we always have had what I need time, but we have made it a priority when we developed our master schedule in the past, it's mostly been driven by specialist schedule. I'll just be honest. And it is somewhat this year because we are sharing specialists, which is a great use of resources and it's working really, really well. But looking at intervening in addition to the core. So when we get these materials, when we do these intervention cycles, they're not missing their core instruction. All kids get that at all times. But when we do interventions, it's in addition to that. And with that, we have, being a school of improvement, we have to take in some of the grant money and invested in additional materials to make that happen. That was something we prioritized. I had a team put together an intervention model, and this pretty much explains it to support teachers in the classroom. Because it's one thing to say, here's your win time, you need to intervene. Tier 2 is happening within the classroom. Tier 3, we look at more individualized support. But we have to support our staff and our teachers with that. And that's something we've really shifted to make happen this year by providing time, support, training, and materials for that to make that happen. And we do bi-monthly progress monitoring. We also have a stat process at Gause. So for teachers, when they bring students forward, the stat process is not a gateway to SPED for special education. However, to look at a student for special education that is a huge identification for a student. So we need to show that we have tried all things possible by these 6-week cycles with the materials that have been researched and the staffing that are trained to implement the interventions to say we're making good referrals, or they push back down into tier 1, or maybe they just need tier 2 just a little bit longer until they're ready to fly on their own again. So we have common baseline assessments in CKLA. So here's a purchase that we did, the use of IXL for ELA for daily classroom interventions and extensions. And in grades 3, 4, and 5, interim assessments that connects to SBAC will be administered once a month in ELA from November, starting next month to April. And teachers will continue to focus on all students reaching proficiency in the identified 3 essential standards in ELA. We're not letting that off our radar. That's a commitment we have made. And so by the end of so this goes into our math goal from last year, by the end of 2023-24 school year, 80% of Gause students in grades 3 through 5 will meet or exceed the 3 essential standards in math as identified by Washougal School District grade level teams. And with that, we did collect the data because that's the work they did before, the year before. In the summer, we had common assessments, but we had the scope and sequence. And what we found in our data was reviewing our data, students in grades 3, 4, and 5 range between 55% to 77% in reaching proficiency. So we still have some work, but we have data that now guides us to say, we got to get to 80 or above, because our goal is that all students would, in those 3 essential standards, would achieve those proficiencies in those standards. And then our SBAC data for math, you can see here, we have increased in our exceeds over the last 3 years, 9%, 11 to 16. Within the green meeting, we've gone down, we stayed about, we flatlined kind of, which we really want to see the growth happening there. And then in the almost meets, 34% to 31 to back up to 35. And then our at-risk has actually decreased on our SBAC math to down to 27%, which is a celebration, but we still won't be good until we see that red go to a sliver or gone. So, and here's our Fast Bridge data for math last year across the year. And you could see in 2nd grade, the decrease in red from fall down to winter, down to spring. And then for 3rd grade, it started a little bit lower, but then it kind of has evened out. And we did see an increase in green, but it still was the highest in the fall that year, last year. A bigger increase in blue for exceeds. And then 4th grade, the red is still higher than it was at spring at the end of the year than it was starting in the fall, but increase in green, a little decrease in the blue, and about the same in the yellow. And then in 5th grade, it went way up. So we're like, what happened last year with our Fast Bridge scores? And I think there was a couple things. One teacher was just starting with illustrative, and we have seen other buildings in the district. We are committed to trying this because we see good results. I think it's working out some of the kinks of a new curriculum you're trying, and just getting the pacing down and everything could be a factor there. But they're not giving up, they're committing to it. And you'll see in a little bit that we're committed to the support for teachers to use that. And then here's our data from K1 for math last year. So our math scores definitely look stronger than our reading coming in. I do think part of that is attributed to we have kind of shifted to more emphasis on math, but it lets us know we can't take our eyes off ELA either, because it'll start to sink if we do. So trying to balance it all. And then this year's goal is by the end of 24-25 school year, based on current student data in grades K through 5, we will increase the percentage of students reaching the 55th percentile or above on the Fast Bridge math by 20%. And similar to ELA, we are doing a 6-week intervention cycles for math using IXL, bi-monthly progress monitoring, common baseline assessments, and illustrative math, and using easy CPM for math. Use that for reading as a way to do fluency check, but we're also going to be utilizing that in math. We've ordered the materials for that. Professional development in illustrative math, I'm excited that that's going to go across all our buildings to get a trainer in to do that. And so all teachers are trained together in that. That's exciting to me when that can happen. In grades 3, 4, and 5, interim assessments once a month, starting in November to April for math. And we will continue to focus on the 3 essential standards in mathematics that have been identified for proficiency. This last section is social emotional. And with our social emotional last year, we did a goal based on our Swiss data to decrease the number of students needing tier 3 supports to no more than 5% of our school population, decrease the number of students needing tier 2 support to no more than 15%, and maintain 80%, at least 80% in tier 1. And you can see we did implement a new intervention model for behavior. What really made the difference was to bring the staff all together and go through the matrix of when is it a major? When is it a minor? How do we respond? And we revamped our system on that. And it has made, it's like night and day with teachers responding and staff responding and how we intervene and look at kids' student behavior. In September at Gause, I say no referrals because that is PBIS is we're going to teach, reteach, and practice. But in the bus with transportation, there are some students that get reported on. So that's what you see a little mark there. But at the building level, that is a time for kids coming back that we need to just practice and learn those again. And so that's how we start the year off. You can see the spikes around holidays. I always kind of find that interesting, but not surprising. October, November, and December, it tends to go up and kids just really, well, it's exciting. It's also an anxious time for our kids or behaviors. You can see a definite pattern there. But and this year we are focusing on our absences. So we looked at attendance since 2014 before COVID. You can see it was 89.7%. And I pulled this from the state report card to 2022, 23, 68.4. So having kids come back to school, we really said, we want them engaged in school. We want them to feel connected to school. I had a student just last week that walked to school just because they missed the bus and they wanted to be at school. And that just warms my heart. I tell you, it's like when you hear kids saying, I didn't want to miss school, you know, it's like, that is the best thing I have to say. So this year's goal, based on our attendance data from 2022-23 state report card, our goal is to increase the percentage of student attendance by 15% or greater. And the steps we're taking for that is we'll continue to our recognition and celebration Mustang of the Month assembly award recipients school-wide at those monthly assemblies, inviting our families. Our first one is this Thursday, and we're super excited. We recognize safe, kind, respectful, responsible, and then we pick a specialized trait that the culture and climate team has recognized, and they did a random acts of kindness this month. And so teachers select the students, we invite the parents to the assembly, and it's a big deal, like to come down up front and have your teacher hand you the award, and it's great. We're adding recognition of attendance by awarding students have 90% or higher with monthly attendance tags. We did this before COVID when I first got to Gause, and we're bringing it back. They each get like a dog chain. I call it a silver chain, and they put like a little dog tag for each month. So even if a student didn't get it, although we have a high percentage in September, which I'm excited about to recognize, but the month they can earn it another month, because we know some of that's out of their control, but the goal is that we want to recognize and encourage that. And we have family events planned throughout the year, Cocoa with Kids, Lunch with a Loved One, Family Math Night. We're doing monthly attendance checks and continue to develop tier 2 interventions for around attendance and social emotional learning. Anyway, that is pretty much Gause in a nutshell and what we're doing so far. I could say a lot more, but I know we're on a tight schedule. So,
Questions about the kindergarten first, just because it is concerning to see that they started in the spring and there was this percentage in red and it jumped. When you talk to the teachers, like what were their thoughts on the driver for that? Because the kindergartners and first graders don't have additional testing, right? It's just those tests in the spring.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what did they think led to that?
well, we have to figure out, they dissect the data pretty much and say, here's where we need to focus on this year. So we're already having those conversations about letter sounds, about letter recognition. So they take that, and whereas before, I think we're just getting better in the PLC process on this. And my kindergarten teacher, last year there were 2 kindergarten teachers. This year I have a kindergarten teacher at K1 and a first grade. So they are PLCing together, but having those conversations and really looking closely at what is the cause of that is starting to happen more. So I think first it was learning that process of PLC, and now they're really digging deeper in the data because we can see why is that. So looking at those areas. specific to that. And we've already started interventions. I was just talking to the teacher today. We have our lap para pushing in because we don't do the fast bridge until January, February with kindergarten. And they're already going in and intervening and working on some of these concepts, small groups. So you get a couple more support people in there, and they're getting exposure to that at least 3 times throughout, the teacher and the para in there. Yeah, and then they send some work home for kids to practice.
And did they see any correlation with the number in red and the like, because some kids just don't test well.
Right.
I get that.
Yep.
Was there a correlation with the number of kids they'd already flagged? I.e., like, had they already identified around that number of kids as being at risk for not really learning what was needed at that level, or did we not catch it until we got the testing report?
In the fall, they do walk kids. They do some other, basic assessments. So they have an idea. But now I just think we're just getting better at using our resources and adding a few more things in to address it. So yeah, I think they do. I know they do have an idea, but like I said, we're just getting better at that and catching kids earlier. But it's definitely an area of focus. K1, we see it glaringly that we need to do a little bit more in those areas of support in addressing certain concept foundational areas to get those boards up. So, and kids learning. Yeah.
I applaud your effort to improve attendance. Kids wanting to go to school is just one step short of kids wanting to learn, and kids that don't want to learn are going to have to be hard to teach. And kind of along the lines that James was talking about, if you're at grade level and if you're way below grade level at first grade, you're behind in second, third. In fact, as you come off the farm, so to speak, as a 5-year-old, there must be a big range of skills already. Parents that spend a lot of time reading to kids versus, hey, dancing with the stars or whatever. And there's nothing we can do about that, except to make it fun for them to be there and fun for them to learn and reward them when they succeed. Brings up a question again. My question, as we go through, it gets like gelling thoughts in my head, but thank you all for doing these jobs. Not my job. So I don't think about it every day like you do, but I know the pendulum swings back and forth in education. Where do we stand now on retaining kids that are not achieving a set of goals, or do we not retain anymore? I just don't know. I'm asking a naive question.
Well, it does. It's not our common practice. There is a process in place through our district if we're considering retention, where you have a team meeting. This is not one person deciding, where you meet with the family. But sometimes it is that, like, they get it. Like, I know when I taught 3rd grade, all of a sudden the light bulb came on. And so looking to see if we tried everything. And that's why I'm excited about this just making some shifts in our interventions, because I think we've wanted that all along. We just hadn't made that step. So I'm excited to see if this is going to make a shift, but we don't tend to retain because social emotional is a factor too. Yeah. I'm also excited to see, because we have a TK at Gause this year, and I know we had community ed as well. Those kids, you can tell who've been in preschool. It's just, it's a natural thing if they've been exposed to that, the school setting and all. There just seems to look different as a learner. But so I'm excited to see the results of that as we've had TK in our building this year for next year.
The last question is on the split classrooms. A, how are they working? And B, are they, I can see them working 2 ways. You could take, say, a kid that is excelling in first or in K, and they go into the one, or I don't know if it's K1 or 2 or what is split, but you could kind of use it to move kids up, or you could use it to kind of backfill the kids that aren't really reaching it. And do we have, as a district, do we have a set of goals for those split classrooms? It seems like we're probably going to be continuing to have them over time.
And I can say I'm kind of a supporter of it. When my own kids were in school, they were in a blend, and it was one of their favorite years, and they thrived. So I went into it like, what supports do you need? We can make this work. And I started this year with a K1 and a 3-4, but our numbers came up in 3rd and 4th. So we ended up a couple weeks in going into straights.
Okay.
But in the K1, the nice thing our district supports is that they get a para in there to support. And if there's any opioid situation, they add to that. We've gotten creative. We have student teachers coming on board that also support. I just met with my K1 teacher today, and it's going great. And the kids I'm so amazed. When I went in like the 2nd week, routines were already in place. The first graders actually are leaders, but I don't feel like they're being held back from it. And the way they do that in their small groups by having extra support, they get what they need. And it's working really well. I don't have parents complaining at all. So I feel like right now we're in a place of success because we don't do it that often, but you're right. We may be seeing more of it, but it's a real positive.
I guess the follow-up question, is that maybe a way to address some of the kids that are in that red zone to help them with more support?
Absolutely. It doesn't hurt
systematically,
to get exposure again to the skills that they may be needing to fill in.
Yeah.
So that is a benefit for sure, because that's a natural in that blend. If they get both, they can, they're pushed when they need to be, but they also get that reinforcement if they needed it and they missed that skill or need more support around that skill. Yeah, for sure.
And quick and easy question. I think I know what a SMART goal is, but what's a SMARTY goal?
It's inclusion and equity is added in.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's
Answers my
where
question.
they've added it, is that all inclusive and equitable. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I asked this, but I have this question percolating in my brain. It's like, hear all this. So in my tenure on the school board last year, I heard a lot about PLCs and how there was a positive trend in our scores, and PLC work is like so important to that. But then it feels like the wind is kind of taken out of sails. So I'm just curious about your perspective on like, what does that mean for how our PLCs are working?
You mean by looking at our data? Is that what you're talking about?
Just, it seems like we've lost some ground potentially. So does that reflect how our PLCs are working, or I'm trying to figure out, sure, because I feel like a link was made, a case was made to me that there's a link there. So I'm just curious to hear some feedback about that.
Which I know we have some model classrooms and model schools in our district that we need to tap into, because that does keep the momentum up. I think anytime you implement a process, the research has shown, what I've learned is it could take 5 to 7 years to really see evidence of that. So I think we're in growing pains. We're learning. When I talk about action research, we're learning along the way, but it does feel like that. But we also need to celebrate there are classrooms in our district that are really successful, and schools really successful, that we could be tapping into our own district, which that's been in the works and talked about. So to keep this moving forward, because we know it is research based. There's a lot of model schools around the US that use this. And so I feel like the process just needs to be, we need to stay with it, because I think it was Jim that was saying the pendulum swings in education. And when you commit to something and just learn and glean and keep it going, I think we can do nothing but benefit from it for sure. We're not seeing absolutely disastrous results, but we do need to keep working on improvement for sure.
Can I add something to that? So I think, so the professional learning community process. So for our school district, we just went through a 3-year sort of focus on that. And we had goals established, but the reality of professional learning communities is that they change as staffing changes in a building. The teams we had established are not the same teams that we have working now. And so I think what we really need to focus on is looking at trends. And the more teachers are held to the expectations of this is how we reflect on student work. This is how we use data to determine what we're going to do, how we're going to intervene when it's necessary, how we're going to provide enrichment when it's necessary. The more teachers are committed to that work and teams and buildings are doing it, then we'll start to see more of a consistency. But we're coming out of 3 years and we've had a lot of transition just in especially at Hathaway, we were hit very hard with that. So I want to believe that the really important pieces of PLC that are existing in maybe some pockets which are growing will continue and expand, and we'll see more of a consistent increase in scores district-wide. So that's my take on it.
I just have random, what's IXL?
Oh, it's a math, they have reading and math, they used it when I was in the classroom. It's just it's a program where kids can practice on math problems.
I thought that's what it was, but I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Tammy, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for our third presentation, and now we're on the home stretch. Erin will get those presentation slides out to you.
Thank you.
And I'll say we are, Les, is it 90 years that we've had Hathaway? So we'll take the oldest school last, and our illustrious leader, excuse me, Wendy Morrow.
It's just giving all you guys.
I introduced Wendy Morrow.
All right. We still have the energy.
Yeah,
The last one, we promise. So it's interesting going last. First of all, I just have to say I am so honored to present with this team, because I was making little notes of things. I'm like, oh, we gotta think about that. So I'm here representing the Hathaway Elementary team. I am so humbled by them every day. I feel so fortunate to work with the team that I do. 2 of those people are in the audience now, so thank you for coming. So I want to share our sort of our mission and vision. So in collaboration with families and staff members, we engage our students in rigorous and joyful learning experiences that meet their individual needs and help each child reach their full potential. And I wanted to note that the word rigorous was added by our team when we started doing PLC work, and we started really committing to taking our school improvement plan goals very seriously. So we wanted to make sure that we were not only providing joy in the work that kids do, but that it's also rigorous. And that our school community truly believes that student needs come first in all decisions and actions. And in every meeting I attend, every experience I have at Hathaway, I truly believe that we are there for the students. This is Hathaway at a glance. So this is the report card. There's a couple of things I want to point out to you. Our enrollment sits at around 281. We are pretty consistent with that. So our students that are from low income households sits at about 50%. That's been pretty consistent for us. And just so you know, that in a number of students is about 140 of our students. And then we have another thing I wanted to point out was that we have with our multi-language learners, we have 12.8%. That is probably higher than other schools because we house the dual language program, which is now started as a kit in a kindergarten program. We're now serving 1st through 3rd grade. And so just so you know, that's around 35 students. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is special services. And while that's not on here, students receiving special services sits at about 17%, which would be around 47 of our students. And then the other thing I just wanted to kind of celebrate is that we are seeing some notable growth with our students. Just overall, when you're looking at the report card, student percents in the 80s is something that we haven't seen at Hathaway in the past. So it's just kind of exciting and motivating for us to see that the work we are doing is paying off. We sat at 67% students at 90% or more school days. So you'll see later on, we actually have a goal around that as well. The next thing I want to show you is, you've seen this now from everyone. We actually were a school of improvement last year, compounded. So we had a couple of groups of students that we were really focused on, students with disabilities and also our multi-language learners. And you can see that we have actually improved in our students with disabilities. And we see some definite upward trends in all of our areas, but our guiding coalition, we have a little saying, it's go for the blue. We want to see Hathaway have some blue on our trend. So that is, we always say go for the blue. And we just a little bit of exciting news, but we are now out of school improvement and we are now foundational supports. So we celebrated that and then we very quickly got to work with always continuing to improve because we know we still have a long way to go. So how did we do? Our goal, our ELA and our math goals are very similar. I worked together with the Guiding Coalition, but also last year, Cheryl McIntyre, our math coach, she's so good with numbers and really finding realistic goals for us that are attainable that we could grasp and know and work on. And so last year it was that based on cohort data, K-5, we would increase the percentage of students reaching 55th percentile or above on FastBridge or SBA, that's Smarter Balanced, by at least 15%. And the reason we chose 55th percentile because that's hits were really safe that they are either low risk or college bound, which are the green and blue. And so we looked at students because we really wanted to look at a group of students and measure their growth. And so we have some data here. 3 of our grade levels actually made the goal. And when I look at the scores of those, I'm really impressed with it. 5th grade, Smarter Balanced, that cohort got 40% and they went to 71% this year. It's like we're in the 70s. So
By cohort, do you mean same kids?
those same kids last year that scored 71, the previous year in 4th grade scored 40.
Thank you.
On the Smarter Balanced. So the grade levels that didn't, I just want to note they still made some growth, but it wasn't at that, it wasn't that 15%. And grade levels that are starting at a slightly higher percentage, we knew it would be challenging for them, but that was cool. So just very briefly, I know this is a whole lot of information. What I really wanted to share this with you to kind of convey is that when we look at this, our goal is to identify the names of the students that sit in the yellow. Are they a almost green? Are they a middle of the road yellow? Are they like a, ooh, we're close to like being in the red kind of, so we identify who those students are in our professional learning communities. We know that students that are in the high risk, they tend to get extra support with tier 3s. They might be on an IEP, they might be getting several services, including LAP. So we really want to focus on those students that are sitting in that some risk category, know who they are, know their names, and what are we doing to make sure we're moving them. So our goal is to see that yellow go down, to see that green and blue on these go up. You can see we started with some low, high risk in 3rd and 4th grade. 5th grade, a little bit higher, not a lot of growth, but you saw in the Smarter Balance data that it wasn't necessarily as consistent. So we saw a higher percentage on that. This is the same, but these are kindergarten and 1st grade scores. Pretty consistent. Kindergarten, we saw, slightly, again, slightly more in that high risk category. We had some challenges in kindergarten last year. We had a teacher that was actually out for quite a bit of the school year. Our attendance in kindergarten was pretty poor. So that was one of the grade levels for engagement that we really wanted to focus on this year. So another way we look at the data is teachers like to see if the strategies they're implementing are really paying off. So now I'm just showing you some trend data for Smarter Balanced in those grade levels. So the past 3 years in 3rd grade, we've seen ELA go from 30% to 54%. In 4th grade, we've seen it go from 52% to 57%. And in 5th grade, we've seen it go from 49% to 71%. So teachers are seeing the power of their ability, their resources, how they work as a PLC, and how that can pay off. So our math goal was set up very similarly, and it was also a 15% increase. So you can take a look here. So we had, while 1st grade went from 57 to 70%, they didn't quite make it. They were like at 13%, so close. So in math, our only grade level was 3rd grade. They were a team that took utilizing their PLC to do illustrative math planning and setup. They believed in it, and it really showed them that that is a successful curriculum for them to be using. So we are looking for our school to have more of a consistent use of that as one of our goals this year. So again, in math, the same reason I shared it with you previously, just wanted you to see that really when we're looking at this, we're looking at seeing the movement of that yellow go down, also red, but really focusing on those students at some risk. And then the same, but this is kindergarten. And then the trend data also, so 3rd grade 44 to 66% in Smarter Balanced math, 53 to 54 for 4th grade. But let me tell you, that 4th grade team is working hard because they're collaborating with 5th grade because we have a 4-5 combo, and they PLC together. So that's exciting. We're optimistic. And then 5th grade math, we went from 31% to 46%. You see, we dipped from last year. And again, I think consistency of the use of a curriculum is what we're seeing here. So we're tightening that. Our last goal was that we kind of assess our use of the PBIS system. And we wanted to grow from 50% implementation to 70%. And then in tier 2, we wanted to go from 54 to at least 70. So we were able to make the 70% goal for tier 1 because that's really what's happening in the classroom, the core PBIS. And then in tier 2, we got to 60. So we only made it halfway, but we're excited with the increase and we're motivated to continue improving processes. So this year's goals. So we did a similar thing, but for simplicity, we actually call it reaching proficiency rather than the 55th percentile. So, and we're going to continue to use cohort data. So a couple of the high leverage strategies that we're going to use to get us there are some that we've used in the past, and then some that we're going to try differently. So teachers will run intervention cycles that include an intervention, extra practice, and extension for each of the 3 essential standards in ELA. So that means that they are going to do a full data inquiry analysis of how their students are doing and make sure they're providing that for all 3 of the essential standards. 3rd through 5th graders will engage in focused IABs, which are very short assessments that are modeled after the Smarter Balanced assessment. And it gets kids really prepared for performing on that test, but it also gives the teacher really great information about what it is students need that they might not have from the core instruction. And then we'll do those January through May, at least once a month. And then, or twice a month, sorry, we're increasing that. And then students will engage in avid Wicker strategies for vocabulary development at least once a week. So when we looked at the data, one of the areas that we found our students, especially 3rd, 4th, and 5th, needed some extra support, it was with vocabulary. So we're going to be more intentional about that and then continue the avid strategy of focused note-taking that we had the previous year. We'll build on that. So we'll keep doing that and add a new strategy. And then we will, for math, similar goal, we like to keep it simple. And we're going to keep that 15% increase. So again, if it's a working strategy in one subject, it's gonna work in all subjects, right? So we're gonna run that same intervention cycle for the 3 essential standards in math. And all the teachers all keep track of all of their PLC work. So we're all able to see each other's data and progress towards this. And then 3rd through 5th, we'll engage in focused IABs at least twice a month in math and ELA. And then we are really focusing on all teachers using illustrative math curriculum for their core math time. And we are planning a training for teachers who maybe aren't feeling as comfortable getting going with it. So we're going to provide that for them. And then our student engagement goals. So when we really talk about engagement, that's the key. We have to have students at Hathaway to have this work. And so when we saw 67%, we were like, oh my gosh, that's kind of scary. So it is an engagement goal, but we're using attendance as our measure. And so we really would like to see it to 80%. Of course, we'd like it higher than that, but 80% would be good for us. The attendance team will meet monthly to analyze the data and identify any students who are chronically absent and come up with a plan of support We have monthly information will be shared regarding the benefits of consistent attendance in the monthly school newsletter via Parent Square. That's from me. I've already sent one out. Creation of a tier 2 attendance team to create plans for chronically absent students. And we have great resources with OSPI. Attendance Works is a great website we're using for that. And then monthly incentives and assemblies to celebrate consistent and improved attendance. So similar to what Tammy was talking about, recognizing growth in attendance, but also students that are consistently there. Also, our incentives are going to be family incentives because we realize at Hathaway that it takes a family and the school to get kids to school every day. So we're going to have experiences like Big Al's gift card, you know, so some raffles for things. So that's pretty good. Okay. Are there any questions?
Kicking us off again. All right.
Yeah, sorry.
I just want to start with first, like, great work to you and your team, honestly. And I love the way you laid out that data in the early slide where we could actually see the student group moving, not just the grade level difference.
Yeah.
Because to me, being able to see that, I mean, that's a huge impact on their lives. That's significant.
Yeah.
I think my question for you would be like any trends you're seeing in the groups of students that had the big jump versus didn't. Was there anything specific that you've been able to identify?
The big jumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple. So one, math specifically would be the illustrative math and the conversations happening in PLCs in certain grade levels. So I have last year had some grade levels that were very focused on moving kids forward. And so even if it wasn't an essential standard, they were still providing interventions and extensions. So a lot of, you get it, so now what are you going to do? And so that just increased engagement in the classroom. And so I think that has a lot to do with those bigger jumps. Also, just the curriculum itself is so much more rigorous. So the level that kids are performing at is just, it's higher. And we have, you know, our data shows that. With the ELA, specifically in 5th grade, but in 3rd grade as well, the teachers have really embraced one, goal setting with students. So students know where they are, like they'll take let's say they take a pre-assessment, they set a goal for themselves. They have a process the teacher goes through with them. And then they set an improvement goal for that. And they do that like several times during units. And I think that when kids better understand what it is they're going for, like, this is where I am right now. I need to be able to do this. This is where I am. And these are the steps to get there. And then the other thing is that universal design for learning. So in 5th grade, particularly in ELA, the teacher gives them choice in how they communicate or share their understanding or their knowledge. And so when she's planning, she's got that end in mind, and then they get kind of a chart with, you know, here are some options with how you can show me that you know this, that you're proficient in this. And it means she knows her students really well because she knows what they choose and how they work best. But it also, I think, again, kids really feel like they're an active part of the learning, and that really pays off for them. They care about it. They want to do better.
We got more ownership in it too.
Yeah,
How they
exactly.
show it.
Right. So I truly believe those are some really key things. And I think that those are really great strategies that more and more teachers are saying, oh, hey, wow, what did you do? Like they saw the scores, and in the guiding coalition meeting, they were like, what are you doing? You know, because she's on the team. So those conversations, and I think that's when you were asking about PLCs, that's the kind of stuff I like to see, is that even though our PLCs have changed this year and we have different people on them, that those conversations will continue to happen in staff meetings and stuff, and we'll continue that work. Thank you.
I have one last one, then I will.
Yeah.
As you think about continuing to make progress in this area, are there any concerns or obstacles that you see to that? And if so, what can we potentially do to help remove some of those?
So one of the things that has been a challenge for us has been, I will be honest, last year we had a very large second grade. We had at times 30 students in the classroom. And if you looked at our data, second grade struggled consistently. So one of the, I think, really the benefits of having blends or combination classrooms is that we were able to lower class sizes and still be able to, like you said, Jim, like we can really meet the needs of diverse learners in that situation, but it keeps the class size smaller. So this year I have, again, a really large second grade, and it's just how it works. And so a couple of things that are really helpful are just we get the support from the district. So we have a para right now that's helping in that classroom. I think that will make a really big difference. So I would say just your continued support and understanding that, if we did need resources, to be open-minded to what we might ask for or request. I have the benefit also of still having grant money available to me. So that, for me, that's a really helpful, it's comforting to know, I should say. But, nothing right now that I would say we would have to have. Yeah.
I have a very naive question about the three essential standards or whatever they're called. Are they developed by each of the schools? Are they
district
from the state? It's district-wide, right?
So we
I think, yeah.
We all have the same three essential standards in reading and in math.
Okay.
One of the interesting things I think is that we will probably, as a district, revisit those to make sure, like, look at our data to make sure those are actually the most powerful three essential standards, which is part of Solution Tree's suggestion, is that once those are established, you've got to look at your data and make sure that you are, always reflecting on that and making sure it's the best three that you should hold kids accountable to.
And Jim, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. When we met Jim a few weeks ago, the Standards Review Board for OSPI is in the process of, takes a long time, right? Yeah. And what they're going to do, we were ahead of that work and very progressive in that. They are going to come out and publish those standards. It'll be next fall. In the spring, they'll be setting up how do we do some PD statewide around the standards? Because understand that some districts did not have funding available. We had Solution Tree, which was a considerable expense for 3 years, and an investment in that. We were able to pull those teams of teachers together to develop those three essential standards. Now, when we look at those, that's not just only three. There's quite a few more standards that have to be addressed, but these are the most important ones. So we want to look at those in the springtime and say, are we aligned? Yeah. Or, hey, we got one in second grade, a writing essential that's not in alignment with the others. Yeah. So we've had teachers in the district, and including myself, as an administrator, that have been on that panel that have been able to look at this throughout those last 2 years to get ready for those, for that information to come out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question, Wendy, the Read Northwest program has been
Yes.
at Hathaway for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
Are you seeing an
it's part of it.
impact of that? It's quite a bit of community efforts.
We have, and it's interesting because at the end of each school year, I meet with Anna and we kind of talk about how students did on the assessment scores, and every student always makes substantial growth. And it's not just that, but it's the connectedness to school, and that helps with attendance. So we decided to keep our support at K first, second, and third this year. No, I'm sorry, not K, first, second, and third this year, because we do see such positive impacts.
And is
on
that
students.
spreading through the rest
I
of the
think we all
elementaries?
have it
Oh,
now.
that's awesome. Good.
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
here. So this week again.
Okay, yeah.
Can I add
Yeah.
something to that? The other, I think really incredible. So that is such a great organization, and Anna does. The reason it's so successful is that our mentors are so committed and they've been really well trained on how to engage students and what to do. But there's some really great opportunities too. The Vancouver Symphony is coming to Hathaway to do a performance for us because of our connection with Read Northwest. And they'll have several tickets where our kids can go for free to future performances. So just a lot of
That's good.
benefits
Yeah.
for
I appreciate your recognition that attendance is a family problem. I'll put it in my vernacular. It's a parental responsibility issue. The parents' rights and there's parental responsibilities. And I think back when I was in school, and yeah, none of the Hodgkin's kids went to school like cut all the time, and I'm just one family in my neighborhood. So I think bringing the family in and with rewards for the family is a great idea. And the last question, congratulations, not a question, on getting out of the school improvement category. That means you're gonna lose funds
They let us keep them.
forever.
The state, well, no, not forever, but for an additional, we got the benefit of, they changed our designation, but they allowed us to continue to receive the grant. So we have one more year.
Okay, and have you thought of how you're gonna maintain what that was able to
Well, it's
buy, so to speak?
yeah, it's interesting because when we took a really deep look at what we needed to do, we really focused on strengthening tier 1 core instruction and making sure that all of our students were receiving rigorous levels of learning opportunities. And so one of our big investments was purchasing the illustrative math curriculum. So when I think about maintaining that, it won't be as intense as having to buy a whole K-5 set, and we bought it in Spanish as well, so our dual language students use it as well, or get it as well. But it might be, I have to buy one teacher book, or so maintaining it won't be a financial burden the way it was to implement it. And we honestly, we've used the money for some smaller things like trainings and things like that. And I think that if you told me we couldn't go to one again, I think we'd be okay. I really do. I think we have a lot of skill on our team. And what we really need to do is utilize that skill in our teachers. And so they talk about that, what they're doing at staff meetings, so that everybody can hear the benefits of what they're doing. So
I also want to intervene just for a second. I know we're pressed for time. And the way, just so that you have some context of this, the way that the funding works for the grant, because we have 3 schools essentially that are in this year, we can include Cape in some of that in the PD that we offer, as long as we offer it to the other 3. So what will happen next year if we only have 2 schools in improvement, we will also include Cape and we will include Hathaway. And we're able to do that with the funding. We just have to kind of stretch it a little farther. But for the next 3 years, for this year and 2 more, Gause and CRGE will get that money regardless for 3 years, whether even if they
Rock
improve
it out of it.
and they knock it out of the park, that funding is still available to them.
That's 3 years.
Yes, right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take the time to intervene, but
No, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Is that it?
Yep. Thank you.
And just one general comment, this looks like a professional learning community. I hope you guys
We are.
meet together and.
We are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
you can tell.
We love each other.
Yeah. I love it.
So we got outstanding
We
leaders. in our
actually
elementary
meet every
schools.
Wednesday morning. So.
Right.
okay, thanks to
Okay.
everybody.
Tracy,
Thanks-
so-
oh, sorry, I'm sorry. So sorry.
I love your mission statement. That's amazing. I love rigorous. I love that word. I hear it so much from you guys and I love that word. Jim asked my question kind of about the school improvement. Do you feel like that is what really pushed you guys to get out, to put your numbers up, percentages up this year? Or did it help? Did it make a big impact? I
So
suppose?
knowing that we were a school in improvement.
Yeah.
So when I found out about it last spring, I feel like we were already really motivated as a team when I started in 2020. Let's say when we actually returned to
Right.
school, we were looking at low achieving
Yeah.
scores.
Right.
Like the trend was very low.
Yeah.
So we knew as a team we had a long way to go, but I feel like we had the
You're
wheels
already heading that
rolling.
direction.
I think
Yeah.
the designation was like the fire that like we really took off from
Sure.
there. So
Cool.
Yeah.
It's cool that you guys get that for 3 years after too, like that's.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna wrap us up if you're okay with that. So I want to thank you so much for sharing. So yeah, all the work that you've put into this, I appreciate it. To see this idea, because we've been doing SIP plans every year for forever, but to see this, the way you presented it today, I really appreciate it. And maybe we can talk later at some point, like, is this a process that you'd like to see it this way in the future? Because I know and what you said, Chuck, was exactly what I was thinking. Like this is the PLC team. We've seen them work together once a month. We have a district-wide PLC team, a meeting, leadership team, and they're together. This summer they were together, so they collaborate together. It's clear what you've done in organizing this and being concise and thoughtful and intentional. I appreciate hearing everything and what you said, Chuck. I mean, about PLCs, when you're together, and the part of this was to have you hear each other. And so it builds empathy, it strengthens relationships and understanding. And like what you said, Wendy, what you've heard and what I think each one of you have heard from each other, because although you've worked on these together, and Tracy hosts a Zoom meeting every Wednesday with them, and they talk about this. So thank you for all you've done tonight and being here, Tracy. Well done. Excellent support and leadership. I think this is exactly what we had kind of thought. And this was an idea that you have taken and did a great job organizing. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it. And yeah, so thanks. You are more than welcome to stay. We are going to pause for 15 minutes and then the board meeting will start. So thanks so much. Excellent job.
What? Into that.
I love questions.
I want to look at that. I am. Yes. I mean, can I? Of course. Okay.
So
I'm just curious.
So understand what it is. We adopted
See in the
Origo or stepping stone, our
Okay, I recognize
core
that.
core curriculum We've been using this now probably 6 years, 5 years, 6 years. Illustrative was always available for sixth grade through 12.
Okay.
Or 6 through 8.
Okay.
It was not available for elementary.
Okay.
And basically
Great. Mileage Club, because I've been just in the office, so I haven't seen Hawks for a while. He's still awesome.
Old fashioned.
I think we're ready.
All right. We're going to call to order a regular meeting. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Are there any agenda revisions today? Right. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? Do I have?
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Right, we have an informational presentation for the budget year-end closeout report. Aaron?
Yes, all right, Shalice. Make sure your mic is on. So Shalice is going to go over the presentation that you have copies of.
Yep.
And this really is two presentations. So we have, the first one is the budget year-end closeout report, and then following that with the 24-25 budget and staffing update. And so Shalice is going to participate in both of those. And as I think I've said before, Shalice is on a contract with us with ESD 112, but she's here with us every day. And she does a great job. We are thrilled to have her. And she participates in executive team meetings, along with a host of meetings that we have over the course of each week. So Shalice, take it away.
Okay, so this is the end of the year report for school year 23-24. So school year ended August 31st. We've submitted all the financials. They've gone to the ESD. The ESD has approved them. And now they're going to be sent to OSPI. Once they approve, we fully close the year. Okay, so in the year-end report, we're talking about enrollment too. So this is our 23-24 budget enrollment versus our average enrollment. So it shows that enrollment compared to budget was down 0.36%, about 10 FTE. From what was budgeted for the year to what we ended with. And then I put off to the side just a comparison between 22-23 enrollment compared to 23-24 to show the significant decrease between the 2 years, which was that 73 FTE.
So if we look at that 0.36%, so the idea that when Chris was looking at our enrollment and projecting enrollment, that's pretty good. That you would see as we have apportionment coming in based on our enrollment. So the process that she historically used and used this year or this last year was again really close. So we appreciate that as much as we can. And Shalice will, as we get into probably December and January, start that process for the 25-26 school year.
Can I ask a question about this?
Sure.
I mean, looks like 10th graders, we had a whole 26 surprise entries. Is that kind of how that goes every once in a while, or just a bolus of some grade that ends up here living here? Or?
Yeah, you think about, so you have 10th grade. Yeah, what could that be? Could that have been new students that we weren't planning on seeing? It could also been in the projection. That's a grade band that we missed. Okay. Right, that maybe we were more conservative than we should have been, or we thought could have been. Yeah, so I think that probably was what it was. So I don't know exactly specifically, for that grade band, what Chris's criteria was and rationale was from going from 9th grade to 10th grade. Yeah. It probably could just been looking previous years, and maybe we had seen from 9th, 10th to
Drop
10th.
off or
We were
something,
seeing, greater drop off.
But what, for you that are managing resources, human resources, what does that do to your planning process?
When we see something like that, well, that's an increase, right?
Right.
And that one,
25
yeah, so that
extra
one,
kid.
and so, it doesn't, when we see that, we don't really make too many adjustments. So if we were to see that in September, we can do some adjustments, maybe add staffing. We could add at the high school, maybe add a course or two,
Yeah.
depending on if we have the staffing to do so. But really, it just means potentially for 10th grade classes, there's more overload.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
the budget, with the planning happened in the spring, we built the schedule in the spring, students, that's when they forecast. So there isn't a whole lot that we can do to a master schedule
Right.
In the fall.
Right.
We can add a few singletons or a few classes, again, if we have the capacity, which we'll do, and then we put a staff member sometimes on a super contract,
Yeah.
which means they have a full schedule, but we can add a section to them if it works out.
So it would cost the district.
Yeah, so there'd be additional cost to
overhead
adding
costs.
staffing.
Yeah, okay, just curious. Thank you.
So the next slide is the historical trend of the annual average FTE. So the whole year, September through June, FTE, this is based on the average of the year. And you can see how it slowly declined with about 1 year that kind of popped back up. But right now we're at the bottom at 23-24, the blue line. I'm just showing the FTE decrease that we talked about in the last slide.
So just quickly, so we looked at this, I think the last couple of years, this has been a slide that we reviewed. You looked at it several times last year. And so there's really two things. So there's for the 23-24 school year, we typically see, and we're seeing there, just as Lisa mentioned, we see from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, there's usually a bit of a decline. Sometimes we see a bump in October. But then, historically looking, the trend is that, where we are for 23-24 and what we believe will continue to be a decline. And then we're optimistic that there's going to be an adjustment there with newer families coming in and more students.
And then this is really looking at the same thing, but for 23-24 annual FTE, this is what you see in your board packet every month. So this shows by month what the average FTE was. For 23-24, the budgeted was the 2,663, which is an annual average FTE. You can see we ended the year at 2,653, so right at that 10 FTE. And we put a line in the middle, little dotted, shows our average, what we had budgeted. So you can see how it raised a couple months, but mostly stayed with that line.
The state funding comes attached to which of these numbers?
State funding comes attached to all of it. So
the average?
Yeah, so
Okay.
what you budget, you get September through December, and then after that you true up to your actuals, and then your enrollment fluctuates. Your funding fluctuates every month depending if your enrollment goes down or up.
Well,
And the trainings that we've gone to with ESD 112 and learning more about the projections and where districts establish, that line. So if you budget off of September, you would think you'd have more money. Yeah, but by the end of the year, you'd be in trouble. If you budget for June and May, you're going to have more funding, but also those are going to be like, are you going to be able to have the staff that you need for the students?
September,
Yeah, and it really is challenging for us to make adjustments over the course of the year. It's easier to add a certificate staff than it is to reduce during the year because we're committed to a contract.
Right.
And same with classified staff, although that process for reducing staff is more possible. That's the right way to say that with classified staff than certs. So that's something that, we try not to do once the school year is started. So that's why the projections are so important.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to the previous question, the historical trend of the district is up or down 2%. So when the 23-24 budget was done, it was looking at that historical trend of going down 2%, and then looking at what grades what FTE was in each grade. It's kind of just pulling it all down by a grade and then adjusting here and there to get that decrease of 2%. Okay, so this slide is 23-24 staffing information, and this is by number of people in positions. So just number of bodies. We split it up into 5 different categories. There's the district office admin, the district office classified staff, PAW, which is the principals, PSC, and classified staff, and WAE, which is the certified teachers. And then we did note that this staffing position does not include our district nursing personnel for 23-24 because they're contracted. They're not paid through human resources. Any questions on this slide? Okay, so this is looking at the breakdown just in a different way. This is by compensation. So the last one was just number of people. This is by their pay. Broken down into the same 5 groups. You can see the percentage change. Our certified staff is most of our HR budget, and then it goes to our classified, our principals and our admin, and then our district office classified staff. Okay, so this is where we ended the year 23-24. So we have 5 different funds. Our general fund ended with a fund balance of 5.71%. And then you can see our ASB, debt service, capital projects, and transportation vehicle fund.
So I just want to add, and I probably could have started off with this at the end of the year. So August 31st was the end of the fiscal year for us. And then just looking at, it takes some time for all the accounts payable decisions to be made and paid out. So we're excited about 5.71 because we talked a lot in the spring, early spring, late winter, and in late spring on, it could be.
Like 4.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's graphics tables we've shown you where it's 4, and then next year, again, 25-26, 4 again, and then lower if we don't make adjustments. So we clearly made adjustments. And so we're going to talk about specifically about that, but we are excited about 5.71. We are, looking at our spending plan. We want to continue to be conservative with spending because, there's things that in the fall that we need to move on purchases for a variety of needs in buildings for the district. But again, we want to remain conservative through November and see where we are, at the conclusion of November as far as in decisions. And then we're really into, the winter and then planning for the next year.
Okay, so this was my attempt to answer the question that Chuck had in, what was it?
As an August,
I think, about how low can our fund balance go? So in yeah. So in this graph, the blue line is our fund balance trend 23-24. The red line is our expenditures, and the green line is our revenue. So you can see that our revenue really just goes up and down. It's based on our state apportionment. Comes in at different percentages every month. Our levy comes in different months, all of that. So the little arrows are showing you every time we had a month where our expenditures over exceeded the revenue we received. So the biggest kind of worry area, and the worry area that we had last year, is the months December through February. So I wrote it down. That's why I'm giving you a minute. So in December to February, we had 3 full months that our expenditures were over our revenue. So if we didn't have the fund balance during those 3 months, that's when we would have gone into borrowing from the county, not having a fund balance, and paying interest and starting that whole process. So at that point, that deficit was $2,505,899. So if we hadn't had that large of a fund balance, then at those 3 months, we would have gone into borrowing.
Yeah.
If you add all 6 months that we ended up having expenditures higher than revenue. It's a total of $4,809,927. So that shows if you added all the months where we had a deficit, that was the total that came out of the fund balance where we didn't have revenue to cover it. So if we're talking how low can we go, the 3 full months that we would have needed to cover was the 2.5, keeping in mind that you still need more after that, because else you're gonna keep going. You're not gonna have the fund balance to save the rest of the months. So really it's the 4.8 that got you through the whole year with a fund balance that was able to save you through all your deficits. Anybody have any questions on that?
Can't we just front load our forecast to the state so they give us all our money between August and
I know.
September that we true up?
Yeah, and what I think we even talked about earlier today is that it's really hard because every year the state apportionment comes in different percentages.
Yeah.
So the state looks at the revenue they're gonna get and they say, okay, we can give you this percentage here and here. And it's never at the time that's best for a school district. Like in July, getting 12.5% is great. But you really needed it, obviously, back in December, January, February. You needed that percentage there and you're not getting it. So you're happy to have that fund balance to be able to survive those like winter months. Pretty much. And it changes every year, their percentages. They can't just stay the same. So it's crazy.
It looks like the fund balance got down to about 300,000 in those
Yeah,
months.
so
That's-
at that
sounds
point,
tight.
the fund balance got down to 1%, which was 513,978.
Okay,
So that's when I wasn't here, but I'm pretty sure everybody was like,
stressed.
yeah, very stressed because it was extremely low. And if they had gone one more month with expenditures being too high, I mean, you would have been borrowing from the county at that point because that was extremely low.
Do you know whether that's borrowing at market interest rates or how the county loans money to districts?
I am not
Okay, that's
positive.
right. Just curious.
Yeah, I know there is interest involved.
Okay.
And in that scenario, there's no way to borrow from other funds temporarily to cover that difference? Or is that a lever we can pull if we have to?
Yeah, they've done that.
It is a possibility. That is something you can do. Yeah.
It's not a best practice, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's normally what you want to do
Yeah.
because now that fund is in a deficit. But it is a possibility. Yeah. And so on this,
But is it wise?
it depends, right? It depends on the fund. So if you have a capital projects fund, for example, and you have reserves in it that you don't need for a like dire purpose, and you want to save the interest money, then you could do that. But normally when you borrow from one fund to another, there's still an interest component to pay the fund back.
Yeah.
And the interest goes to the fund.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
to pay ourselves and pay the county.
So if dire straits, if we were actually dipped down to where we needed to borrow, rather than going to the county, it makes sense to borrow from capital projects, for instance. And knowing that we would have to pay ourselves interest, but nevertheless, that is an option.
is an option. Yeah, you'd probably have to weigh at that point which one was the best option, depending if you're in the middle of putting a roof on the high school, you probably can't borrow. You know what I mean? So depending on what's going on in the funds, it might not be a possibility.
But the goal
Because
is
they
to
might
avoid
already
that,
be committed.
because you get into a bad habit potentially and a little bit of
Yeah.
a spiral going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Well,
then
and the roof falls through
in
when you
terms
need
of
that
the-
money or something.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
And really, that's the only fund you could take. from.
Yeah.
Debt service, you can't take from ASB, you can't. So you're limited. And so if there's stuff going on in that fund, it's probably not the best option.
The point at which the state comes in and takes over, that's at the end of the year. So even they must see these dips during the year.
Yeah, so what happens is when you do, sorry.
Right.
When you do your budget and your year-end financials, if your budget is showing that you are not gonna be able to get it through the year, now you're on like a concern list.
Right.
And you have, I believe, about a year to show that you can turn it around. And if you can't make that year and you close the year and you don't have any money, then you get put into binding condition,
Okay,
which is pretty much where the ESD
takes
is
over.
Yeah, they make the decisions.
right?
And then you have so many years to get out of it before they have to figure out what they're gonna do.
Let's stay out of it.
Yeah, any other questions about that?
We're good. Let's see.
Yeah, so you passed a resolution, so we could, if we needed to borrow, because we were concerned.
Right,
And last year we didn't have to do that,
right.
right?
No.
And so and so we are, and because of moves that we were making last year, our fund balance is moving in the right direction. It's why I mentioned, and Shalice is reminding me multiple times, we want to be conservative in our spending. And we are seeing more school districts
Yes.
reach the binding conditions status.
Really?
And we are on the list,
Yeah.
the watch list, right? And so we won't know for probably several months, probably 5 or 6 months, when that gets updated to see, how are we doing now for the 24-25 school year? We're optimistic based on this and the criteria that the state has established in the fund balance, expenditure, and expenditures and revenue ratios. So there's a variety of calculations that are involved to determine, that list. And then like you mentioned binding conditions. So clearly we want to avoid that.
Yeah.
And so we did some really challenging work in the spring, and we
Yeah.
believe it's going to pay off. But we're continuing to look at it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your questions and your interest, in avoiding that situation.
So it'd be a terrible
Yeah.
position to be in, I think, for any district. I know that as long as we're diving deep on this, when do we include in our projections of income the inflation of housing costs and the growth of the levy funds? Or do we assume that, okay, next 2025 levy funds will be more or less the same as 2024?
The levy is projected in the budget. So there's a tool that OSPI has. It projects how much you can claim, because we get rolled back in our levy. So what we're approved is not what the district is eligible to claim. There's
okay.
a per student cap. That cap increases every year based on the IPD. So like the COLA increase. And we can collect up to that amount. So it's hard thinking about the levy because as our enrollment goes down, our collection goes down because it's based on our prior year's average FTE. So if our prior year average went down 71 students, now we can collect that cap times 71 less. So we can collect even less of the levy. But there is a projection, and we do budget what we think we can collect.
Where do the remaining levy funds get distributed to?
They don't get taxed.
Okay.
So it's kind of like if you went out for a levy for $1 and it was going to equal 5 million, and then you got rolled back. Now your taxpayers might only get taxed 0.85. Yeah, so they only get taxed the rollback. So on this slide too, we kind of listed what the fund balance savings were. So there were mid-year reductions in staffing hours. There were conservative purchasing. We ended up claiming 100% of all of our grants funds, which we were not projected to fully claim. We used 100% of all of our categorical program funding. So that's CTE, lab, all of those funding sources have carryover, which means you can carry it over to the next year. It's revenue you already have, but you can keep it on the books and spend it the prior year. We didn't do that, so we claimed 100% of it to try to utilize all of our funding. We ended up having lower accounts payable runs than was projected, which is great. So less MSOC spending, which is operating cost spending. And then we had lower staff leave cash outs than we projected. I did note that we're estimating large cash outs for 24-25 because from our estimated list of retirees, we have some longtime people that are thought to be retiring.
What is a leave cash out?
Yeah, so when someone is here, depending on what leave they get, vacation, personal, sick, if they're eligible for retirement, then when they leave, any sick leave on the books gets cashed out.
Got it.
Vacation gets fully cashed out up to 30 days.
Got it.
And that's when they retire.
When they retire, vacation is if they leave.
Okay, okay,
Sick leave is only if they're eligible for retirement.
okay.
Got it.
But the flip side of that is they would probably be replaced with a much younger, less expensive. teacher, right?
Yeah, depending on the position,
Right.
maybe.
I mean, for
Yeah.
a regular,
And challenging to budget
yeah,
for
Yeah.
this particular,
Yeah.
you know, item.
scenario,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just one more thing, like we did talk about being conservative and really seeing where we are, and I think probably seeing where we are after November. Because at the beginning of the year, you have our annual insurance premiums, we have start of the year costs. We're renewing all of our contracts right now, personal service, ESD, all of that. We're gonna have large expenses going through, like we're expecting our October AP run is going to be a lot larger than September. September's is pretty small, mostly because we were really focused on ending the year. And then everything's gonna catch up. And I think once we hit November, we'll be able to have all of our large purchases done and be able to really see where we're gonna go for the year. Okay, so this is just graphs based on our revenue and expenditures. So the first graph just breaks up our revenue by how we receive it. Our local funds, which is levy, local donations, local grants, federal funds, Title I, any federal grant we have, and our state funds, which makes up most of our budget, which is what goes based on our FTE. So then the next graph is our expenditures, just broken up. So you can see 86% of the 23-24 budget was salaries and benefits. And then we had 11% purchase services, which is contracts, 3% supplies, and then the other is like travel, travel, little costs. So it came in, it says 0%, but it's a very little sliver. So I tried to change the color so you could actually see it. So that was it for this part of the presentation. So does anybody have any questions?
Well, thank you.
I think we asked.
Yeah, this was broken down really well. Thank you.
We're just pausing for a second to hear our next presentation.
We
Do you want some music?
Yeah, we did it 2 in 1. So,
All right, so next is budget and staffing update, so Jane, we had these basically every month, starting in probably January. And so, we held off in September.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And so now we want to give you an update on our 24-25 budget and staffing. And so similar information just for this current school year. Take it away, Shalice.
okay, so this is really what was in your September financial packet, but we budgeted 2,530 average FTE. We came in at September at the 2,545.79. So that's really good. You can see that's 15 over what we budgeted. The one thing to keep in mind is we were trying to do a conservative budget. So that enrollment projection, instead of the 2%, it was sitting at like 3+ down. So we're 15 over what we budgeted, but we've actually declined 127 students. So our enrollment went from 2,673 FTE at the end or in 23-24, and right now we're at the 2,545.
So does that make sense to everybody?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
So budget wise and funding wise, we're gonna get more state apportionment than we budgeted. But FTE wise, we still have gone down.
Also, we expect these numbers to drop throughout the school year.
That's the typical
That's the
trend.
trend.
Yes.
Looking at last
Yep,
year.
But
exactly.
fingers crossed, you will go up.
Yes, yeah.
So is there, assuming there's usually a specific drop, are we potentially did we over budget then? Because
I personally don't think we did. So October is not officially up yet, but we went up even more in October. We
No
did
kidding.
more enrollment. Yeah, I didn't put it on here because it's not officially like approved by OSPI and all of that. But next month, when you see the report, we did go up a little bit more. I think now we're up around 20 students instead of 15. So that's positive. So then if our trend, if we were to end probably around the 25, 30. So I think we're probably gonna stay.
And looking at previous trends, I mean, with the exception of 2020, we don't usually drop more than 15 from
Yeah.
beginning to end, so.
So I think we're probably safe. That's good. Yeah. Okay, so this next slide is just a graph showing our average, showing our fund balance each year and then trying to show kind of the 5-year average. So you can see the fund balance has really, as everyone knows, has gone down. Has just taken a hit, but you can see from 22, 23 to 23, 24. We did in the year well, it's going up about 1%. It says 5 to 6 and it's 571. Do you have a question?
I'll save it.
Okay.
That's a really good pause. I appreciate you doing that.
You made us stay
I
on.
know.
Okay, so these are the same graphs that we saw in 23, 24. I changed the color. That was it. To show our staffing. So this is our 24, 25. We did it as of October 1st. Number of people in position, broken up by the 5 categories. There is a note that again, this does not include our district nursing personnel, and this does not include the finance director because that is a contracted position currently. So they're not in HR.
So, yeah, so we didn't want them to reflect in the table, but want to make sure you understood, anyone else looking at this, that we have contracts with the SD 112. We added Shalisa's contract for this year. I think historically, we've always had a contract for our nursing support.
So then the next slide is the same thing, but the compensation breakdown again. By the 5 different groups. And then this slide, I tried to do so that you could actually see the differences between the 2 years. So this is 23, 24 versus 24, 25 number of positions. So it just shows the position in each group and then what it is as of October 1st and what reduction was made last year. So you can see the admin non-rep, it says it went down by 9. There's 1 contracted, but it still did go down. Classified non-rep went down by 4. Principals didn't go down. Classified staff 18 and search staff 12 for a total of 36 positions. Which was 9.5%.
Any questions about that table?
Percentages helpful, thank you.
Okay, so that really is, update for this current school year. If you are interested in seeing an update later on, we can certainly add an update possibly in December, so you can see, how are we, or sooner than that, we could just whatever you need to see. So I don't know that it needs to be as frequent as we were presenting this information last spring, but it's good to see certainly enrollment and how that's moving along each month, as well as our budget.
I think every few months, in my opinion, is great.
Okay.
Not like every month, but every couple months, I think is helpful.
What's that?
At least initially.
Sure.
Unless there's a huge change or
Right.
something happens.
Great. Okay.
What's the lift on you to have to put all this together? I always like to know.
Oh, it's not that. Yeah, I can do it. It's fine. Quarterly is good.
So Shalise, as I mentioned, is doing a really good job, and we are asking her to focus on budget. And so our expenditures, money clearly coming in, money going out, and so that's where her focus is. So we're going to keep it that way because so she can stay focused on that, support her team, and we are seeing. I think the results from this work, and we are, as you look at this, the previous table, we are leaner than we were in previous years. And I can speak to specifically this district office team and how much I appreciate the work that they are doing and in most cases, taking on additional responsibilities. And what we're finding is those additional responsibilities, our staff are accepted those responsibilities and are doing a really good job with supporting our efforts. And I think that's why, that wasn't one of the reasons that we've identified, but I'm really impressed with our team. And as I've been in buildings for the last 6-7 weeks, and I'm impressed with what I'm seeing. And the same thing goes for in buildings, that we're asking staff to do more. And again, I'm seeing it happen. I appreciate that. I'm also seeing it with for the most part, with an optimistic attitude. And we saw the principals. I mean, what a great presentation by our elementary principals in identifying and prioritizing the work. And we believe it's going to pay off. And we're seeing some of those results. I appreciate your question about, is the PLC initiative, are we seeing the benefits of that? And again, these things do take time. In many cases. Okay, so this particular slide, so WASA has identified their legislative priorities. And so I thought it was important to share with you, so special education, pupil transportation, and then MSOCs, or that's an acronym for materials, supplies, and operating costs. So we've talked about that last year multiple times. So this is, they've come out early with a focus on advocating for these three specifically. And I know that you are familiar with these items and the why behind them. So I think it's just important for us as much as we can to advocate for our district, to advocate for other districts in Clark County and across the state as the legislators when they come together in January. And hopefully what we're going to see is an increase in these areas of funding. So that's something that we're going to be communicating to our legislative representatives, hopefully often, with the importance of this. Yeah.
It's important.
Can I ask a question about that?
Of course.
Do you have kind of dollar numbers for what the deficit is to our district?
Yes.
There's some other items like counseling, social workers, psychologists, nursing that aren't funded that we have to pay
Right.
for. I'm just curious whether these are the three biggest budget deficit.
Right. So so we can share. That's something that we could do to share with you.
Not tonight necessarily.
No, of course.
just
So yeah,
just
so we can
curious.
tell our story, right?
Right.
We can these topics we can share like a global perspective,
Yeah.
but we want to tell a Washougal story, and we can provide you with that information. Now, I will say that if they can deliver on these three
Okay, that
items, then what we're going to be able to do is then we're going to be able to spend, where we have additional needs in staffing.
Right.
That will allow us to spend money on staffing and those staffing needs and support for our
Even though it's not
students.
part of their model.
Right, it's not being, because we're seeing utility costs going up.
Right.
And so that's, we more than what we're getting from the MSOCs. Our transportation needs are unique, I believe, to our school district
Yeah.
because of the size of our school district. And you heard David Sow talk about that in the last presentation, where we have, a full bus that's carrying, a half a dozen students. And we need to do that for our students' benefit, so they're not on the bus for 2.5 hours
Right,
potentially.
right.
And that might be a bit of an exaggeration. We talked about really long trips if we don't do that. So thank you. So we will come up with some information for you, and then I'll
Just
send that to
curious.
you, and probably
Context.
in a Friday communication, we could talk about
Okay.
that at a future meeting.
And then another question, a lot of the special ed needs are, in my understanding, are driven by federal mandate. And do we have not a full court press, but some press on our federal legislators to fund their mandates? I kind of remember when it first came in, it was a big unfunded mandate from the federal government.
Yeah, so that's a good
And I
question.
support
And
it.
we can talk to Connor about what he's what he is hearing when he meets with his,
Yeah.
his people in the county. And so that's something we can ask him to share information with the board in a future board meeting. So as far as, as far as that goes, I hear what you're saying, that there's the expense for the needs to support students identified with special needs. A lot has to do with what the team decides on the level of support. And so, and again, we have a higher percentage of students receiving special services than we are portioned.
Right.
And so there's that situation, which is, again, unique to our situation, that not every school district has that situation.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll talk to Connor and see if he can provide some information for you.
I think that'd be helpful too, if we were contacting them, our legislators with that
Yeah.
information.
Have those numbers. Yeah.
If you go to the next slide.
And a problem with contacting our legislators to make the board aware. In the past, we've had a day on the Hill where we have gone to Olympia and made appointments to talk with our legislators. And this year, they're not doing that. Instead, we're going to have it in Bellevue or Seattle or some other mythical place. And the legislators won't be there. So I'll bird dog that and see if there's opportunity, but I want to facilitate board members being able to
Bobby,
and enable our legislators to help us.
understand.
So I'll keep you posted.
Great, thank you. So what I shared with you is WASA's priorities. So this is a similar slide that we shared last year, just thanking our legislative representatives for the assistance with MSOCs and special education funding. We're hopeful that the work we're doing is going to show the results that we expect. Again, we heard from our elementary principals talking about, and Tammy mentioned multiple times, like these are best practices, what we're doing. These are research-based practices. And we believe it's gonna pay off with the consistency, accountability, like that's important. And being so consistent with these supports and these practices. So the last thing is just what we identified, an additional bullet from last year for this team was the staffing model. And what can we do to adjust the staffing model to better reflect the staffing needs that we have based on our situation in Washougal? You go to the next one. And then just our current legislative representatives. So here are information to contact them, right? So we're going to have some potential changes with who those individuals are in the near future. Currently, those are our representatives. So if you want to communicate with them, and we can work on a draft of what we could share. I'm going to be sharing information regarding something I shared with you in our last meeting about TK and that funding shortfall. So I signed up for a group of superintendents that are going to be working with legislative representatives probably next couple of weeks. So I'm going to have a chance to talk about our situation with TK and how thrilled we are that we have 40 TK students. We have a waiting list of more TK students that want to participate. And, potentially we could add a TK. But given the information that was shared recently with the funding shortfall of about 40%, that's not something that would make a lot of sense for us to do. Because right now we've got to come up with an answer to that shortfall. Because we budgeted for 40 students, which means we have 4 certificated staff members and we have 4 classified staff members supporting those students. And so that's a big challenge right now that we've got to figure out.
Do we know the dollar amount for that shortfall? If we can't get it?
About $400,000. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Retract that. 80 students. So we have 4 TKs with 20 in each classroom. Thanks, Tracy.
What, do you know when the legislature's in session? I don't think they're in session again until after the election. Is that?
Yeah, January.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the specific day, the first day of. Okay.
And this is a long
It
session,
is.
right? This
Yes.
year, so they have money to play with.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
We hope.
it is a long session.
These people will change by then too, so we.
Yeah. Okay, questions about staffing and budget?
Did you say we were on a watch list? Did I hear you correctly?
We are on the watch list, yes.
Okay, based on
So it's based on, there's a number of criteria that establishes whether a district's on the watch list, and it has to do with ratio of your expenditures to your revenue and in comparison to your fund balance. So I can share with you the document that's just for Washougal that identifies 4 years, the pattern for 4 years, and what our score is. And when you have a score that puts you on that list, it provides the criteria and then our individual scores for each year of the last 4 years. And so I will share that with you in a communication tomorrow, so you can see that as a PDF. It's also a spreadsheet. If
I
you
want
want.
the spreadsheet
Okay, I figured you would.
Does that show, do we have access to seeing like all of Washington? I think
Yes,
we do,
this,
right?
this, yeah,
Like,
this
I looked that up.
this
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheet has every school district
That's what yeah.
in the state. And so you can just choose which one you want to look at.
There's a lot
Yes,
on there right now.
yes. And the spreadsheet has 295 districts. They're listed, yes.
Yeah.
And then you can also, there's another sheet that'll show you who's on the watch list. No questions?
Nope.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Shalice.
Thanks, Sharice.
Great. Next up, we have 2 proposals for action tonight. I don't think we have anybody signed up.
We do
tonight.
not.
Okay. So I don't need to read my script. All right. First up, we have resolution 2024-25-01, authorization to acquire land. Aaron.
Yes, thank you. So you have a copy of this and it was shared with you on Friday. So I think it's best just to look at the resolution.
Yep.
And I think this is, it's done very well. It identifies the specific information I think is important. The first one is that we entered into an option with this agreement in 2020 for this particular property. We have identified this particular property in our current CFP plan. And so that was in 2022. Let's see what else is crucial information, that we have impact fees from new development. And then so that's the amount of the revenue that we're looking at for this purchase. And I think the last one is the second to last whereas, which is the district has determined this is in the best interest to acquire the property now because it's an option that's going to expire December 31st. The location, I think, will serve this district well in the future. And I believe that we have vetted this decision. And so I think as far as, questions you may have, I think this would be a good time to ask those. But I think we've looked at this property and think that this is a really good decision for us.
Since this is a proposal for action, I move the adoption of resolution number 2024-2025-01, our first one.
Did anybody have questions first though? Should we ask that first? Did anybody have any questions or?
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to note for the record that this is money we can't spend anywhere else. So just on the heels of that budget presentation, I know there's nobody out there listening, but just to, oh, yeah, sorry.
I think that's it's
important.
important point,
Yeah.
that these impact fees are identified for capital projects. And this is a part of our plan that was developed in collaboration with the city. And so I agree with you that that's important detail for the purchase of this and those impact fees and what they can be used for.
And we've all looked at the land. I think all of us have been up there and it's not something we can use tomorrow, obviously, but in my opinion, I think it's in the best interest for us to purchase it.
It's prudent.
Yep.
Is there
Yeah.
a contingency if the county
Urban growth.
declines the expansion of the urban growth boundary?
Not as a part of the agreement.
No, but as
Right,
far as,
yeah.
do we have a contingency as a district? If
Well-
the county, if the county says, well, that's
Yeah,
part of the
yeah.
natural scenic refuge, you're
Right,
not
so-
gonna build anything there.
so my understanding is that it's been identified in the future UGA
Right.
And so it certainly looks like that's going to occur. And as far as a contingency plan, that isn't something that we,
Yeah, just asking.
Yeah, so I think.
I thought it was gonna be approved
Yeah.
last year
Right,
at the county level,
Yeah.
and it wasn't. And there's an election, who knows who's gonna be on
Sure,
that county council
sure.
next
And
year.
I think that one of the reasons is for future need,
Right,
the school district, and we're talking 10 to 15 years.
yes,
Right. So I think, a lot can occur over that time. And I think that this particular property in 10 to 15 years is going to be worth a lot more than it is now.
Yeah.
As we've seen that trend in this area. And so I think that's why I think it's a wise decision with an agreement that is going to, expire at the conclusion of this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second Chuck's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Great, motion carried. Brilliant. All right, next one is resolution 2024-25-02, capital projects commitments. Turn it over to you.
Right, thank you. So this particular resolution, there was a decision in 2016-17 to move that $500,000 to make it available for a future site. And so what we're asking is that this be moved to for a need for replacement and upgrade projects. We have a number of projects that we've been talking about, that we talked about in the spring, and that we are currently moving forward with an RFP process. Because, for example, our high school roof, turf, we have a number of security upgrades that we're looking at the high school, at Gause, Cape Horn-Skye, and Canyon Creek, and eventually district office as far as upgrading our security system. So safety being a priority, we feel that is something that needs to occur. And so we believe that this money, the 500,000, is for really immediate projects. And that's why we're requesting this.
All right, do I have a motion or anybody have any questions?
Nope.
All right, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve resolution 2024-25-02.
Second, anybody?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right. Next, we have a policy revision and second reading and approval for a new policy, 6550, which is the capitalization threshold for leases and subscription-based information technology agreements. Turn it over to Aaron.
Yes, so we had our first reading, and I just wondering if there were any questions regarding this particular policy. I think, as I mentioned, when we shared this initially, this is going to assist us with subscriptions and the length of those subscriptions. And so I think it's going to be a more of efficient way for us to handle some of those purchases.
Okay.
Okay.
Ready? Yeah.
Almost answered.
Yep. Motion to approve?
Motion to approve new policy 6550.
Second.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
Aye.
Oh, all in
Aye.
favor, sorry.
Aye.
It's been a really long day. All right, next up, do we, comments from our board of directors?
I started all night today.
I'm just getting started.
Yes.
All right, Ida, would you like to start?
Sure. I just thought it was really great to hear from elementary principals today. I really appreciated that information. So thanks for setting that up. And I did kind of like the format from previous years. So it is, however, a little disconcerting to see those numbers. So we've got some work to do, I would say, as a district. So I'm really interested to hear how we progress on that. And I think that's needs to be a huge priority, at least for our board and our district, as far as I'm concerned. Check.
I really enjoy and appreciate the format of having the elementary principals all at once that gave us a good picture. And I'm gonna save those handouts for next spring when we hear from them again, and see how well they did. And I'm pretty sure they'll do real well, because that's a good group. The PLC came up, and I'd like to ask for sometime an educational thing for the board on the PLCs, how they are structured. I've heard them being vertical, that is a subject matter covering grades. I've also heard in building a grade level. And I'd just like to know more about how PLCs are and that how well it's working. The evidence is so far, we've sat in on PLCs, they're working real well, but I would like to know more about the structure.
Yep.
I'll follow up on that. I know it's an expense. And I part of our analysis should include how much it's costing the districts. And at some point, 7 years, 10 years, whatever it is, I think the board needs to really evaluate the effectiveness. From my various relatives that teach around the country, PLCs are something that many districts do. I think we're doing a very good job of implementing it for success, but it still has a cost, and any kind of cost benefit analysis should include the cost. I know other districts, it's a complete waste of time. And people that may move here from one of those districts might challenge the utility of spending money on that. I'm a believer, so it's not that I'm questioning it myself. I'm a total believer in the concept when implemented the way that we're doing it. Seems like it's working. And then also second, what I said, appreciation of the format of the set of presentations, 2 hours, all elementaries, kind of side by side, seeing the PLC nature of the administrative staff is great, and more time efficient than having 4 1-hour presentations scattered throughout. And I think my questions were really to all 4 of the principals, and I think it's a great format. So thanks for putting it together.
We'll quadruple that sense of I'm not gonna go into details. You guys have covered it all. It's nice to see how passionate they are. I also just want to appreciate our director of finance and this board, all of you, for operating very conservatively, especially seeing those numbers last year and how close we did get. I'm glad that we're operating under that and continuing that. So thank you. The one thing I would add is I do think it's really important with the authorization to acquire the land that we have planned community messaging to go out, if we don't already, unless I'm sure you're probably already over it with an infographic.
He's like, it's.
But just to reiterate that, right? Because if we don't tell the story and get the facts out there, people make up their own mind about things as they hear about stuff without all the details. So.
And part of that being we're, as a board, we're looking out decades, not what do we need next year.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm exact what everybody already said. I'm not gonna repeat it. They were amazing. As always, like, those numbers were concerning, and I think we're still recovering. I mean, I hate to bring up the C word, but COVID is still out there, and it's still, I think it's gonna be years before we get fixed from that, I guess. But yes, and I'm loving 5.71%.
Yes.
I was worried. I mean, we were looking at way lower than that. So that's amazing. And thank you for all your hard work. And also Tracy, thank you for ladies too. All right, Aaron, you're up.
All right, so a couple things. I said this at the conclusion of those presentations. I thought they did a really good job. It's a new format. We talked about that. I thank Tracy. I want to thank Tracy again. Thank you for your leadership and being receptive and like solution focused and flexible and thinking. So our offices are right next to each other. So I will, on an unscheduled moment, I know it, seriously, unscheduled, come over, Tracy, what do you think about, like, what about this little, and so she always listens and considers it, never says no, just considers it. And so we've done a fair amount of tweaking on that format And so I think, yeah, again, I liked it. And I think you did a really good job with supporting them along the way. We looked at presentations last week and it was very structured. It wasn't scripted in the sense that what they shared those were their stories and their words, but we wanted some consistency with what you were seeing. And so I think that really helps when you're looking at these numbers. And you start to see similar tables and similar charts. The WSIF is very important. That's how we're really assessed. That's our report. Do we get our grade report each year? And so I love what Wendy said about the blue. Yeah, that was great because we want to see blue. We want to see trends going that direction because it's always going to be 3 years. So when we get the most updated one, it'll include 2024, 23, and then 2022. We still have 1 year, right? There was a COVID year. So we're looking forward to seeing improvement. I so appreciate the expectations that I'm hearing from you, the questions I'm hearing from you regarding this initiative that we've talked a lot about. So is it working? And we will certainly we'll share with you information. I will tell you right now, though, the big cost was in the training and the contract. And so right now there's a cost with 40 minutes each week that students are not in class. And so we want to make sure it's worth it. And we believe in it. And we feel like we've improved in the process, but it's going to continue to be the routines we're establishing and looking at our data. So thank you, Tracy, Shalise, good job with the presentation. Appreciate the work that you did. And so Kim is here. Is one of our valued staff members who has a lot to do with accounts payable, receivable. So thank you, Kim, for participating and as a spectator in the work that you do daily. Okay, so a couple things. So we have some individual rewards or our culinary team. I think I mentioned this a few presentations ago. They're currently receiving an award for the Action for Healthy Kids and USDA's Food and Nutrition Services. So 52 school districts received recognition for incentives and innovative work. So Jonathan, Sherry, and Margaret are currently receiving this award and presenting our story with what we're doing in supporting our students and staff with really good food. So we heard about it today. So that's pretty amazing. Appreciate the work they've done. Heidi and Nathan Keller are receiving an award on Thursday. That's going to be at WSU Vancouver. This is the 2024 Learn Here Celebration Reception. So Heidi, Nate Keller, and Michelle Nerby, who is a parent up at Cape, I believe, who does a fair amount of volunteering in supporting our efforts and her children. So I just think that's great when our staff are recognized for their volunteer work, right? This altruistic effort that they're making to support our community. So, and I think we'll have some staff there to watch them receive this recognition, hopefully get some pictures. So I mentioned the legislative priorities. And so that's something we're going to be identifying. What are your legislative priorities in the near future? So I think, Chuck, that might be around November that we might be starting to talk about, where do we want to focus?
Yes.
Right. And so we're seeing that the state agencies are communicating loudly what their focus is. So that'll be a decision that we'll be discussing in the near future. And then as far as another presentation, sounds like PLC presentation is what you're looking for. So that'll be a future.
Jump on that.
Yeah.
I would like to see an honest teacher that says this isn't really working for me.
Mhm.
I would be curious to see. I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to say that, but I mean, maybe it's just not their favorite thing, and I would love to know why.
Yeah.
Maybe too. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's asking a lot, but
Yeah, so we'll discuss. We'll discuss what that presentation looks like, and we want authentic responses.
Right.
You want feedback. It's not just what people think they want you want to hear, but what's the truth? What's happening?
I noticed that in 2 of our school visits, we will be going to PLC meetings.
and those are always the ones that are amazing, which is great. I mean, I wish everybody could be, but
Yeah, I'm not sure we need a full presentation at a board meeting about it.
yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I have a good one.
I can get it one.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Maybe not then a presentation.
Unless you want to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah. This, again, it's.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's more of an update too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you as a longtime educator, initiatives, right? Initiatives come and
Come
go.
and go, yeah.
And so there has to be a cycle that seems to happen. But when we think about individuals talking about the work, and I think this is evidence right here, like just what we did and what they heard from each other. And it's hard to like put a price tag on that
Right.
time, that effort, that energy. Will we see results from that, positive results? I believe we will.
I think we
Because,
are already.
yeah, I think, yes, I do.
Uh,
And again, but we want to see those results, right? We want to see continual improvement in the areas we've identified. And we really have with our INS report, we talked about less data, right? We're more focused on what we want to spend our time on and what we're prioritizing. And I believe that's similar in our buildings. What we're identifying is where we want to see movement.
What I also heard is it takes specific things to work though. Like if you have a lot of turnover, it's not gonna work. So I feel like, what is the things that you need to make it work? Do we have those things? If we don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you ask your question, that's exactly what I thought of is when you have staffing changes, it's a team. And when a part of your team is gone, that impacts the team.
Well,
So that the consistency, that's why we're trying to, like, we're establishing a structure. The structure is not going to waver. Like we need fidelity to the structure, to the system. And then when people come and go, because we will see individuals who make different decisions, they retire, they go somewhere else. That's going to happen. So the system, it can't be that fragile that's going to fall apart when one person leaves. But when we have these mixed classrooms where we have, a third and fourth grade or a K1. And then I love to hear that we have like the other kindergarten teachers and the first grade teachers, that's a larger PLC.
collaborate, yeah.
And collaborate. So that's like that, but we've got to stick to the structure that's been identified that does work. And you need consistency and you need people to engage in that work. I'm sure we can find someone who isn't
I know,
completely supportive.
I know,
Not to put them on
I
the spot.
Yeah, for sure.
Out there that probably don't.
Yeah.
But because there is so many changes, you get comfortable with somebody,
Yeah.
but if they're all on the same page, then when you change it.
Yes.
To me, it seems as much a cultural shift. And I'm thinking about my stepson that is in another district where they have the time, but the culture, it's not part of their school's culture.
Yes.
So it's a waste of their time.
Right.
And I think it's become a part of our school's cultures.
Right.
And that's a real positive improvement in the culture.
Yes.
Just collaboration and,
Right. We know what happens when we work together as a team,
yeah.
right? And we're smarter, we can be more efficient. So I think those are the things we're striving to see more consistently. Okay, that's
Is that
it. Yeah.
We don't have any citizen comments today, right?
No.
I'm sorry, just want to express appreciation to Jane for her suggestion on how to make our feedback relevant,
Useful.
to how the board
Yay.
functions. I think that was a good addition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look at you making all these awesome.
So so to that, yes, it is a policy that we have.
Yeah, you
Yep.
send us out the policy, which is a policy.
But how we do it, but how you choose to, yes, is
it
what we're
can
talking
be-
about.
It can be meaningful, and
Yes.
not waste Corey's time.
Yeah. All right, that's it.
All right, any future agenda items? Ready? All right, those wonderful board evaluation forms are online still. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in order? Or all? Talk today. All in order?
Aye.
All in favor, good grief. This is adjourned. It's a.
Thank you.
There we go. That's